unmute us.
We're live.
Hello, all.
Welcome.
Welcome.
This is a special Monday night.
Yeah, it's not our typical Monday night live stream. So,
No,
and
it's
we're
definitely
earlier.
not. We were a few minutes early. Is that usually our modus operandi? Probably
Well, we're not usually on at 7.
No, that's true. We're not. We're usually on at 8 o'clock. So some may be coming in a little bit late, but that's okay. Because tonight is going to be a very important conversation that is going to involve, I don't mind saying, the top 4 candidates who are seeking the open congressional seat in Florida's 20th congressional district left by the late Alcee Hastings. The election is 5 weeks from tomorrow. And as far as I can tell, and as far as you can tell, Jen, it doesn't seem like that many people are promoting it on corporate media. They're trying to keep this race a little quiet.
We're not hearing a whole lot about that out there.
I wonder why that is. Corporate
I don't
media.
know. But so let's be clear. We invited 6 candidates. Really the top 6. I mean, I think there might be some other people that are in that, but we invited the top 6 candidates. 4 are joining us tonight. 1 declined but responded, and 1 just never responded at all.
It is what it is. But to the 4 that have, we are extremely appreciative that you did. And we're certainly looking forward to what hopefully will be an insightful conversation. It's very important that we have this conversation because members around the district need to know where their candidates stand. I think it's always important and very appreciative for those that do come on that want to share their message and explain why they feel that they are the best option for the district. You know, that I think in many ways is, what should be the top priority, is reaching as many of the constituents as you possibly can. Now, even though we are not residents of the 20th Congressional District, we are pretty close.
We butt up against that.
Yeah, so Pembroke Pines, next to Miramar, parts of Sunrise. So it's interesting. Part of Sunrise is our district and part of Sunrise is their district. So as you know, the gerrymandered lines cut very differently in many ways. But we are going to give the candidates a couple of minutes to jump on.
And I did tell you that I did hear from Sheila Sherpalis, Mccormick's campaign, and she is going to be on 15 minutes late. It is what it is. She'll jump in when she gets here, and we'll just go. But I did appreciate that they let me know, which was very
no,
nice.
Absolutely. And that's always important.
Yes, it is important.
We would assume that everybody would obviously let us know. But of course, like I said, these conversations are key to finding out exactly who is going to represent their district the best way possible. And we're going to try to get this out to as many people as we can.
And honestly, and we'll put the clips out of this. We'll put them out, so that everybody can look who wasn't able to come on live. But I do think it's very important for people to look at how people respond when they're invited to come and talk to constituents and come and talk to people that are not only voters in their district, but just general, just to talk about the issues and how somebody just wouldn't even respond. I think that's very telling that somebody just doesn't respond. And so I feel like we could call it out.
No, I think we should call it out because if you want to represent, there's this idea that, and this is one of the big problems that we do see in politics today because our country is so divided in so many ways, is this idea that if you're running in a particular party, you're only answering to 50%, if you will, of the electorate. And that's really not the way it should be. It should be, listen, we may not agree on a lot. And you may even be in the other party, or you may be an independent. You may be in the party that I'm trying to represent. But if I am your elected representative, I am representing you.
Right.
And I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And so that speaks more, I think, to what we need to have.
We need people that show up and be present. So just so people know, so we're going to be speaking with Mayor Dale Holness, former commissioner now, and Representative Omari Hardy. They're actually the first 2 people here, which is cool. We're waiting for Senator Perry Thurston, and we're waiting for Sheila Sherpalis McCormick. But as I said, she's late. Bobby DuBose replied that he's not coming. And Barbara Sharif just never responded.
So for those that
for people who are voters,
that gives them a little bit of a
yes. If you're a voter and you're looking for somebody to represent you, then you don't necessarily want to go with the person who can't be bothered to respond to constituents. Like, that's just not, it's not a good sign.
No, and again, we played this little dance when you ran for office, and unfortunately, that's just the way that some representatives are, and
Well,
it is what it is. It's politics, but there is a generational change of sorts, if you will, that's happening where the old way of doing business is just not the way that things are going to be done going forward. There is this sort of changing of the guard in many ways, and that doesn't mean that people who've been in politics for a while can't evolve. And some of them do evolve, which is great. And that's the way it's supposed to
you have your Ed Markeys of the world.
Yes. Ed Markey's a great example of that. I would definitely say that.
It does happen. People evolve.
But we are in Florida. And of course, we're in a state that
evolves slowly.
It does.
At its own primordial
the rest of the
pace.
Country, the rest of the country is going to have to drag us along in order to get us to where we need to go.
They're foaming at the mouth to get a nice new abortion law going here. They're foaming at the mouth one now.
Yeah, that's going to be a big one. Unfortunately, you know what though?
The truth is that's not an issue that we're going to address tonight because it's really a state thing and it's not anything that we need to get into in this discussion tonight.
Yeah.
But that's just like it's like Florida will look at the most back-asswards thing that another state does and go, oh yes, that looks good. We'll do that.
And again, I don't think that there's enough political will, especially with the backlash that Texas is facing because of that decision by Governor Abbott. And one thing about Governor DeSantis is that he definitely thinks he's going to be the next president. So he's going to try to not step in any doo-doo along the way.
Well,
I'd like to think that would be a big pile of it if he tried
I think it would be a bad move. But, that doesn't mean that
what stops the GOP from making bad moves, right?
Well,
not much.
I don't see. Nothing stops anybody from making bad moves. It's a plethora of bad moves.
Well, they just assume that everybody's going to forget. That's basically the way it works. And so we're just going to, when did Sheila say that she would be?
She's running 15 minutes late. We should start. We could definitely start talking with Representative Hardy and Commissioner Holness.
Yes, and hopefully
it's very
Senator
weird
Thurston
for me to say
will come
it. So,
up.
yes, and Perry should be on here. Now, maybe, and this could be maybe, he's a little older. Maybe he's got more tech challenges. I don't know.
Hopefully, Senator Thurston has somebody who's going to assist him with that if there's any issues there.
I know that's sometimes
I
the
will
case.
say this: when I saw Senator Thurston on a panel recently, he had that original cutout that he used to have, where like you had like the gray screen behind, and you were like a silhouette of sorts.
Well, it's using the Zoom green screen.
The Zoom green.
It's
screen.
Like but I don't know, and that's fine.
So let's get the show started. We accept the fact that not everybody is here. I'm sure they will be.
That's okay. The truth is, only one person really can talk at a time anyway. So it doesn't really matter to me. And quite honestly, this was not anything that I ever intended to be any sort of a debate. It's really just to get people an idea of where candidates stand on some of the major issues so that people can make up their mind. That's really all it is. It's information. It doesn't need to be a debate. This isn't about drama.
No.
And so to me, it doesn't even matter. It's easier to get it all done at one time.
Soundbite or two is that it's always fine.
No, we're not having fighting.
We'll have a good time. Okay. So without further ado, our first guest that we will bring into the studio.
Because he is looking bright and spry, sitting right there in the back room.
He is the former city commissioner in Lake Worth, and he is a current state house representative for the state of Florida, who is now running to be the congressional representative for Florida's 20th district.
Give it up, Lou. Give it up, Lou.
Amari Hardy, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hello.
Don't mind the dog.
They've been having a little barking exchange for quite some time this evening.
They're having a moment.
So that will be she may need to.
She might need to go. Well, probably my husband just came home.
And in the other corner, forgive me, I'm going to have a little.
Okay, this is because right now there's just the two of you are on, so this will be kind of fun.
He is the former mayor of Broward County and current county commissioner of Broward County, running as well for Florida's 20th congressional district. Welcome, Dale Holness, to Generational Change. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. No, this is really important. And like we said, even if people come in, it's still important for everybody to know where you stand on the issues. And everybody can only talk one at a time anyway. So it's just as well to not necessarily have everybody. But I just think it's really important. I think that these are not done often enough. Certainly not, most people don't see them. And so I think it's really important that we talk about these things. So do you want to, you have like a whole formal list of things you want to get into?
Well,
Do
I
like
think
introductions.
yeah, I know. I think that is very important. I think that it's key for people to understand who is running, why they're running, and just get an overall understanding of who they are. And we're going to try to keep it obviously to a little bit of a tight window in terms of 90 seconds to 2 minutes,
Yeah.
depending on the topic, and depending on how the conversation is flowing. That's obviously going to be key as well. But Commissioner Holness, the floor is yours first. Please introduce yourself to the audience, give a little background, and obviously why you're running for Florida's 20th Congressional District.
Okay, this is for 2 minutes. Or how long?
Sure. Well, you know what? We're not really formal here,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, just give a brief introduction for
She's
people.
the good cop. I'm the bad cop. You'll get
Yeah, something. But I mean, for people who don't know who you are, I can't. Obviously, nobody in Broward, but there's probably people watching that are not Broward people that might not know who you are. So that's where you should tell them.
And how long will the forum last for?
We'll go till we're planning to go till 9, but we'll see how the conversation goes.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Shorter.
But yeah, it could be shorter. If you need to go, it's all good. We just want to get you guys to talk about these issues so we could have clips so people can say, oh, make a smart choice.
Yes, if I can get off a little bit early since I came on early. Right?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'm Dale Holness, Broward County Commissioner for District 9. I served last year as the mayor of Broward County at the height of the pandemic. I was first elected to public office in 2004 in the city of Lauderdale. I saw a need that existed, and I thought I'd lend my hand to help. In 1998, I interviewed all the candidates running for Lauderdale City Commission as co-chair of the Political Action Committee for the Realtors Association, a candidate screening subcommittee. And what I found was really folks that really weren't engaged and understood what was going on in the community. At 19th Street and 55th Avenue, there was a place called Mission Lakes Plaza. They call the area Deep Side. We had drug dealers selling drugs openly across the street. In fact, I drove a blue Mercedes then, and they would wave me over. And the city hall was across the street from there. And on the other corner was a police station. What was probably most appalling to me is one of the person who was running for mayor, who was an elected official and got reelected, by the way, said that it wasn't unusual for that kind of stuff to happen in urban areas. And there was blight all around. We had low home ownership, extremely low home ownership rate there. Our poverty, our schools weren't doing well, our business were struggling. So I ran and started to attend every city commission meeting from that point on. I finally got elected in 2004, making a pledge that I'd help our business help. I started the Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce. And also, within that same year, I got elected in March. By August, I had a chamber up and running. By October, we had the first business expo for the city, in the city's history, and put together with some bright people, got to get a Lauderdale Education A+ plan, work from there to put empower kids in the power of work in our schools. We really see some changes occurring in that area. Increased home ownership, helping those who needed jobs to get jobs. They work closely with Broward Workforce Investment Program, and got elected to the County Commission in 2010. In 2010, I got there, and I thought that what we ought to do is continue building on the economic opportunities for folks who've been left out. So I really focused on contracting opportunities for small minority women-owned businesses. In 2010, 10.25% of our procurement went to them. I'm happy to tell you that in 2020, 44% went to them, representing 136 million. Many of our small minority women-owned businesses are now prime contractors rather than subcontractors. Worked to put in place at the county Florida's International Trade and Cultural Expo, because I believe that as Americans, we must sell more of our goods and our services to the rest of the world. We cannot continue to have China outsell us around the world. So it's an important thing that we must do in order to continue the prosperity that we've come.
So let me ask you, would you say that's a priority, is promoting, obviously, I mean, not just, any business, but Black small businesses, and specifically in your district, is that something that you focus on?
Absolutely, because so understand, with the high poverty, high unemployment, and that existed in Lauderdale, that exists in District 9, which is a reflection of what is in District 20. The way you get folks to change that generational poverty is you got to let them own their own business, grow their own business. They can hire themselves, they can hire their family, because that's what occurs. Also create home ownership, increase training programs for apprenticeship programs. An electrician makes a good amount of money. So folks who might not have completed college could become a plumber, could become an electrician, and they can make $100,000 a year, especially if they went out and start their own businesses. So it is, in my mind, one of the cornerstones of what needs to be done to transform District 20. You look at it, there's low home ownership rate, about 57% compared to almost 70% out there. You look at the unemployment rate is higher than anywhere else, poverty rate higher. So to me, the economic disparity that exists within our nation is deeply seen in District 20, and we must as a nation work to change that.
And that is very emblematic, I would say, in a lot of ways of what is going on in District 20, Commissioner. And without further ado, we also want to welcome in Sheila Sherpalis McCormick to Generational Change.
Hey, Sheila.
Welcome.
We're just doing like intros. Commissioner Holness just did like an introduction. And so we're going to move to Representative Hardy. You're known in where you are, but people down in Broward might not know you as well. So it's sort of an opportunity for you guys to cross-pollinate. So introduce yourself, and I like that Dale went into, kind of where he sees like the huge, like bigger issues that need to be dealt with. So would you do the same?
So thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk with y'all and with your audience. So just to give you a little background on me, I represent District 88 in the Florida House. District 88 encompasses West Palm Beach, Riviera Beach, and Lake Park, as well as cities in South Palm Beach County, like Lake Worth, where I first started to serve locally, and Boynton Beach and Delray Beach, and so on. West Palm, though, along with Riviera and Lake Park, those cities are in the 20th Congressional District. So I represent them, and hopefully I'll have an opportunity to continue representing them in Congress. So I live up here. I serve in Palm Beach County, but I was born and raised in Fort Lauderdale, actually, in Broward County. In Lauderdale Manors, both my parents were educators. It's the family profession. My grandmother and great-grandmother, they were also educators. Miss Ruby Watson founded one of the first schools for Black kids, one of the first pre-K schools for Black kids in Fort Lauderdale. And so it's just in my genes, it's in my blood. And after graduating from the University of Miami, went initially on a music scholarship. About halfway through, I decided to get a degree in something practical, so I got my degree in economics. Moved up to Palm Beach County, moved up to Lake Worth, actually, and started teaching. And look, there were lots of issues, and still are lots of issues in Lake Worth Beach. But, when I moved there, a few things were apparent to me immediately, just the lack of infrastructure. On the west side of the city, and in particular in the southwestern portion of Lake Worth, where the residents are largely people of color, we didn't have we had miles and miles of unpaved roads in the city. That's not an exaggeration. I actually had our public works director add up the miles. It was a lot. And these were parts of the city where people of color had historically lived, and no one thought to pave their streets. And here we are, about an 8-minute drive away from Mar-a-Lago. And, in addition to that, you had a city that was about 65% non-white, okay? People of color, Black folk, Haitian American folk, Guatemalan Mayan community, Mexican American community, and so on. 65% of the city, that's who the residents were. But there were no people of color serving on the dais. And before I got elected, when I ran against a 3-term incumbent and won by 18 votes. But before then, there had only been one Black person to sit on the dais in Lake Worth, and it's over 100-year history. And, mind you, the city was founded by 2 former slaves, Fannie and Sam James. It's a story that not a lot of people know. And so, look, when I was there, I had an opportunity to serve folks who didn't get much attention from folks in the city. And I also had an opportunity to learn about how government really works and about how people who serve in elected positions really behave. For me, what was frustrating as someone who taught civics during the day, to have to deal with people who, if you listen to what they said, you might believe that they're doing everything they can right, for working class folks. But every time you would give them an opportunity to, provide direct aid to working class people, there would be some excuse for why they couldn't. I remember trying to, I had an idea of finding the city's worst slum landlords through the code enforcement process, and then segregating $25,000 a year of that money and making it available to tenants so that they can have attorneys when their landlord, for example, files for eviction against them, right? And that idea was just seen as ludicrous. Like, how dare we attempt to help tenants? And there were a bunch of other things, and so it was really in kind of bumping my head against that wall of just opposition to commonsensical ideas that I learned that something's really broken about the political process. But still, we were able to get some things done there, got community IDs done, built over 150 affordable and workforce units while I was built or approved over 150 workforce units and affordable units when I was there. We got community IDs done, which is a program that's allowed over 3,000 undocumented immigrants in Palm Beach County to gain basically access to basic services in their own name, right, from local governments, and served in the Florida House, saw how Democrats operated up there. We don't tend to have much fight in us. And so I'm running because I think it's important that we build on the legacy of this fighter for justice and for our community, Alcee Hastings. And I think that if there were ever a time for us to elect progressive, forward-thinking fighters to the United States Congress, it's now.
Yeah.
Very well said. And of course, Sheila Sherpalis McCormick.
You don't say it right. Sheila Sherpalis McCormick.
Okay, us guys can't say things.
I don't know, but I've practiced it.
Sheila, the floor is yours. Please share your sentiments as well.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. And I am super excited to be here with all of my life. And I say that candidates, I'm Sheila McCormick.
You're choppy. Your mic is
mic's
choppy.
going in and out, Sheila.
It is? How about, okay. Is this better?
Yes, much better.
Okay.
And
I had to flip it over.
No, that's better.
Okay?
Yeah, it's
All
better.
right.
Just talk. Yeah, it's good.
Is it still choppy? I hear something. I don't know if that's my mic.
On our end, it sounds good.
It's fine right
Everything
now.
good? Everything's good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm Sheila Sherpalis McCormick, and I am running for District 20. Thank you so much, Jen, for having me on this show. And thank you, Peter, also. I'm extremely excited to be on this podcast, especially with fellow allies. And I bring that up because I want to start off in thanking everyone who is joining us as we're fighting what's going on with the Haitian migrants, especially that we're in Texas. And it's been a fight, and it's been heart-wrenching. And, it means so much every time we have non-Haitian Americans show up for us. And so I would like to thank Rep. Omari Harding and Dale Holness for showing up for us in Palm Beach. It has been a hard lift when we have our allies who don't show up and we're there by ourselves. So I just wanted to say that first and foremost, because what we see going on at the border with the Haitian community is really a lot of human rights violations that are going on throughout the whole world right now. And many people are being silent. And it's an injustice that we cannot stand for. The way that things have been covered up has been repulsive. And every time you hear people say, oh, well, maybe we don't need progressives, or maybe progressives shouldn't be here, issues like this show up because it takes political boldness to step up and say what's going on is wrong. It takes political boldness to say whipping people and saying, oh, no, it's not a whip, it's a rein. But when you use it as a whip, it is a whip. It is a whip, right? Yeah. So we see a lot of injustices that are going on consistently, and we need a bold voice to actually stand up and say no longer. I can tell you my background and how I even got into this.
Yeah, I mean, let's do like a brief background, because we want to start getting into like the issues and just see where everybody stands. Just do like a brief background.
Okay, so I went to Howard University for my undergraduate degree, and I am the child of immigrants. Let me start by saying that, because if I don't put that out there, my family looks at me sideways. So I am a child of immigrants, first generation. My mother is Haitian and my dad is from Haiti and Dominican Republic. We grew up going to both islands, so we were very connected. In addition to that, I went to St. Thomas University for law school. I was a single mother raising my daughter, and I started actually advocating in DC around the Affordable Health Care Act. Around that time, there was a lot of implementation issues, and I was successful in doing a healthcare regulation, later on promoted to be the CEO of a healthcare company. In that capacity, we were able to hire more than 1,200 people and create those jobs. We have fought with the governor and ensured that we had minorities participating in the vaccination process. We just have really been pushing for inclusion. And at the end of the day, this campaign is about economic justice and social justice for working families, to include that everyone is included in the economic recovery plan that is affecting the entire United States.
Yeah. We
Very
should
well said
segue
as
into
well.
healthcare.
Yes,
though.
we're going to segue into healthcare. Senator Thurston was attempting to get in.
Yeah, and again,
looks
I
like
don't.
there may be a
Again, I
tech
don't want to
issue.
sound ageist, but
Yeah.
there could be issues. So one of the things that I always did appreciate about Congressman Hastings was he was an early supporter of Medicare for all. That was something that he signed on to, and so really, it's one of those things. Like, we believe that healthcare is a human right. And so I'm posing that question to all of you. I'll start with you, Commissioner Holness.
And one thing I do want to add, this particular congressional district, 20% of the residents, over 150,000 people, do not have health care. And I would think that if you want to talk about a priority that could immediately impact, a lot of people, obviously it's very hard to get anything in terms of, like, let's say, Medicaid expansion passed in Tallahassee. Amari, you know that well. Being able to take the next step at the federal level could be really key for this particular district. So we'll start with...
I don't know, Commissioner Holness. I'm just curious,
Fire.
First, is healthcare a human right? And if so, what are your thoughts on how we go about doing that? And do you support Medicare for all? HR 1976 is the name of it?
That's
okay.
Pramila Jayapal's
Yes,
bill.
the Medicare for all bill.
I do support Medicare for all. I think it ought to be a human right. It is important. It's essential for any country to ensure that its people are healthy. If folks are not healthy, how are they going to be productive? They then become a drain on our system, and everyone pays for it. What we're doing now is administering emergency care to folks who need to go see a doctor early enough to get a disease taken care of that can be cured and can be remedied without them having to go to a hospital to be cared for, and possibly get to where they are not able to work at all because that illness debilitates them to the extent that they are no longer productive. It affects families, the children, or the parents, for that matter. The businesses are going to suffer it. So it's good for families and it's good for business. And I don't understand why some folks can't understand that. It is really crazy in my mind for folks not to get that. And by the way, when Obama ran for office, the first place they had 24-hour access to was my real estate office in Broward County, when kids got thrown out of the DEC office when they closed at 5. They came over. And that relationship continued with Robin Donaldson, who coordinated the support for Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, for 5 of the Southeast counties in Florida, so that the community would activate to get their members of Congress to stand up and support Obama. That's the first step of the Affordable Care Act. Now we must expand that, and it's critical that we do so.
Okay.
Absolutely. Representative Hardy, do you support?
I mean, we know because
Yes.
we've spoken before about it. We know that you do, but just talk about your thoughts on that and how important it is.
Yeah. So, on my website, I say it very clearly, healthcare is a human right. And I think that Medicare for all is really the first step to ensuring not only that folks have access to quality healthcare, but that we have real healthcare equity in this country. And the focus on equity is, I think, important, because that is what allowed me to get to a place from saying, okay, really, if what we want to do is provide access to healthcare, is to provide a public option for folks who don't have it, right? But you still lose that equity piece. Why do you lose that equity piece with the public option? Well, because there are folks, various specialists, who do not provide care, even to people with insurance, and certainly not to people who have, an insurance that comes from the government or health coverage that comes from the government. And the only way to ensure that no one has a better or worse chance of getting care based on how much or how little money they have in their pocket is to have single payer Medicare for all, where there is no private insurance. The insurance companies are out of business. And also where no one is paying money out of their pocket into the healthcare system. Single payer is the only way to ensure that no one has better or worse access to care based on how wealthy or poor they may be. And so that for me is important because, look, as a person with ADHD who has sought treatment for my ADHD, it's very difficult to find specialists who really understand this issue that I and many others have, who take insurance. I have insurance. I've got dang good insurance. But the best providers who specialize in this issue that I have with ADHD, they don't take insurance. Why? Because their clientele are rich parents from Boca, right? Who have $500 a week to spend. And so, you know what? Even though I've got insurance coverage, it's not good enough. That's why we need single payer. Because it's about
the underinsured, not just the uninsured. It's the underinsured.
It's about the underinsured. It's about those who are insured, but who need services from folks who don't understand, apparently, the wide scale societal problems that result when you are a medical provider and have an expertise and you refuse to treat people, even if they have insurance. I mean, that's gross. And you know, just to close, when I say Medicare for All is the first step to providing access and health equity, really what we need is to get the profit motive out of the medical system. And by the way, you can't do that just with Medicare for All, because you're still having these private providers who are going to look at someone's access to Medicare as an American Express card, when in reality, they should be thinking only about how they can provide the best care to that person. We saw that with the opioid epidemic, where folks had insurance or other forms of health care, and these treatment providers, what were they doing? All they saw were dollar signs. And they weren't looking after the human beings. They were doing what they could to bill their insurance or to bill, their health coverage in some other way. So what we need is a national health system, a public national health system, much like Britain's health system. And I think that will go a long way towards not just providing access, but equity.
So on the record, we have Representative Hardy, who supports an NHS-style system in the United States, which sounds pretty cool.
I support anything that gets everybody health care.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Honestly, there's enough smart people to figure it out. It's not rocket science.
No,
every other country has it figured out. It's not that complicated.
It's actually pretty simple. Remove the for-profit middlemen in between you and your doctors. They don't need to exist.
But so no, I'm for all systems. But Sheila, obviously, I know that you're obviously a supporter of single payer. But if you have anything like specific to add or stuff, because I do like that. Omari, you brought up the disparity. I think that's huge. And when people talk about the public option, you're creating a two-tiered system.
Yes.
And that will inevitably end up not working. And when it doesn't work, they'll come back and say, see, public health care doesn't work. And it can't work when you have all the lemons on one plan and all the stars on the other. Somebody explained it to me like that with the healthcare. But Sheila, talk about that a little bit.
Well, I definitely believe in Medicare for all, but we have to understand that Medicare system is exactly what you described. It is lemons, right? Especially when you're looking at children who have disabilities and expanding it and what they have access to. I've been raising my daughter with a learning disability for years, and that's how I actually even got into this fight. And the disparities that we see, especially by your zip code, should never exist. And so that's why there's a need for us to expand. But expanding Medicaid the way the bill stands right now, there needs to be things added to that. And that's where my background expertise come in. And we need to use the power of the pen to expand it. Right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We can right now today create a healthcare telemedicine portal where people can call in, talk to a doctor. Let's not forget, we are still in a pandemic. We still have people who are dying and have no access to any kind of healthcare. That is atrocious. It should not be if you get COVID, they tell you to fend for yourself at home, while other people who have health insurance can call in, do a video call, and figure out how to treat themselves or to even get antibiotics. So as we're in the middle of a pandemic, we need to open up a telemedicine portal. There's been a lot of funding that already went into it. So let's just open it up for now as a precursor until we pass Medicare for all. But another thing we have to look at in the bill too, there has to be more information or more funding for pre-existing conditions, more funding, especially when it comes to preventative care. We find that things like diabetes, which are one one of the number one drainers on our healthcare system, that could be preventable. That has been proven. We find also that when it comes to congestive heart failure, the things that lead up to it, such as high blood pressure, cholesterol, if we had screenings earlier on, we can catch a lot of these things that actually devastate our healthcare system. And then the fights when they tell us, oh, you can never afford it. It's not true. If we just try and take a whole bunch of sick people, leave them sick and put them on the healthcare system, of course it's going to fail. But we have to take responsibility for the system that we have in place, which actually has us submitting food deserts that impact our nutrition, where we have practitioners who refuse to come into different areas because they feel like they're not going to get paid, because payment from Medicare is atrocious also. So we have to confront ourselves and deal with ourselves honestly. We're in a pandemic. Open up that portal. Allow us to start easing into Medicare for all until we can pass it. And if we're going to talk about the actual budget, let's balance the budget and have healthier people getting on Medicare and have a healthier country like the other countries.
Yeah, it's definitely an investment, not a cost.
Yeah, and I think that this is a great segue into the issue of economics, particularly the economic issues that are facing Florida's 20th Congressional District, according to the American Community Survey on House.gov. And this is going back to 2019, and obviously things have only gotten worse, unfortunately. But poverty in Florida's 20th Congressional District is 3 points below the national average, 18% poverty rate for seniors, 17% overall. What are some economic solutions that you guys think would benefit well for the district? Obviously, there are many limitations, and we'll get into the limitations that freshman congressional representatives ultimately face. But what are some of those economic ideas? Obviously, we're big supporters of a more green energy economy. Obviously, the Green New Deal comes to mind, but there's a lot of different philosophies out there that one may have. So let's mix it up a little bit. Let's go with Representative Hardy first on this one. What are your thoughts as far as what you would consider to be one of what you would consider to be a strong suited economic solution to dealing with the high level of poverty in Florida's 20th Congressional District?
You know, I appreciate the question. I'm going to try to approach that from a few different angles. I think
Sure.
The first thing is we have to have a kind of mental repeal of the last 40 years of rhetoric around programs meant to help people living in poverty. Okay, programs meant to help poor people. Beginning with Reagan, we had this idea of anti-poverty programs as being things that are basically these temporary aids until people work themselves out of poverty, and that the goal wasn't to make the poor less miserable, right? Because poverty is an immiserating experience. Okay, Reagan's idea was the point of these programs is not to allow people to live in dignity whether they're poor or not. That the only value to these programs is that they helped people who were poor sustain themselves until they could no longer be poor. That to me, we have to take a step back from that and realize that it's okay to help the poor without this idea that they should be bootstrapping their way to middle class or upper middle class life. And it's, you know, what it is, there's an internal judgment happening about people who are living in poverty, right? When we have this idea of welfare to work, like, no, let's just provide people welfare because it's wrong in a country as rich as ours for people to not be able to live with dignity, right? So that's number one. Number two, something that I think we should really get away from is this concept of trickle-down economics. This idea that says, in order for us to help poor people, what we have to do is incentivize businesses to create jobs for people who need or want jobs. That, to me, all variations and manifestations of that idea is something that we really need to leave behind. And to me, I'm reminded of our conversation about how to help folks who are unhoused, right? We can make this complicated or we can make it simple, but people who are unhoused because they don't have houses. Give them houses and let other things sort themselves out. Give them houses, give them healthcare, give them all sorts of other things. But the key thing is that they don't have a house. So give them that. With folks who don't have jobs, my gosh, we can give them a job. And that's where an idea like the Green New Deal comes in, because it has a federal jobs guarantee. That's where an idea like a civilian climate corps comes in. building on one of Roosevelt's greatest accomplishments, was the Works Progress Administration, saying that, okay, folks don't have jobs. We're not going to create these complicated programs to incentivize big corporations to employ them. There's plenty of projects we can do. In Roosevelt's time, it was building bridges and dams and so on, right? And we'll give them jobs directly. In our time, it's addressing the most important challenge and crisis of humanity, which is climate change. And there are lots of jobs that we can give people directly. That to me is the most important thing. And for me, when I think about creating jobs in this district, I'm thinking about the Green New Deal. I'm thinking about a federal jobs guarantee. I'm thinking about a civilian climate corps. And I'm thinking about our public schools and all these other areas where we have an opportunity to give folks jobs directly.
Yeah.
Very, very well said, Amari. I'm going to swing it over to Sheila now. If you have your thoughts, obviously Amari has specified his support for the Green New Deal as well as the federal jobs guarantee.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about what would be some long-sustaining economic solutions for the poverty issues facing Florida's 20th district?
Well, I'm happy to see that we started rethinking poverty, but the rethinking of poverty hasn't been something that's done on a mass scale. What I'm talking about are our stimulus checks that we recently saw. We're seeing that now we have the child income tax credit, which gives people who have children $300 per person. And the impact of that has been reducing poverty amongst families close to or even more than 40%, which is a start, right? But what about everyone else who's trying to recover? What about everyone in this country? Our district has 50% over 55 and older. Are we saying that they can live in poverty and not recover? What about the other class of people who are being cemented into poverty with their student loan debt, who can't afford to even have a house, buy a house, because the housing market is too expensive? Or what about the mother who's sitting there renting but now can't afford her rent because the prices of rent have gone on? If we don't act right now and extend how we're rethinking poverty, we're going to have our district further ingratiated in poverty. And that's why I'm asking for the $1,000 a month economic stimulus at least until we recover. Because then we'll see districts like District 20 who can now have a poverty rate shrinking at a pace of 40%. That's huge. And the reason why it's so deserving in our district is because our district has been systematically left out of economic opportunities. For example, when it comes to federal funding and grant acquisition, we see that minorities, women have not had the same chances at getting these contracts. There's no need anymore for us to do research. The research is there. The pay gap is present. The only question is, how are we actually going to create jobs? How are we actually going to build wealth? And how are we going to expand small businesses? And it's very complicated. And I think that's why the 20th district is in the situation that it's been in. We haven't had anyone who's actually experienced or had the experience of creating jobs. We haven't had anybody who had the experience of creating generational wealth, and we haven't had anybody who had the experience of growing small businesses. And that's what makes me specifically suited for this job in Congress at this time. I have done all of these things, and job creation doesn't just come by, we're going to just pass a bill. It's more strategic than that. What we have found is when you help small businesses acquire those federal contracts, they hire within the district. That's how we were able to come in and create more than 1,200 jobs, because I hired the people I knew. I hired my friends, my neighbors, and we saw a rising tide of economic change. When it comes to even education, there's a reason why our company created a vocational school, because we saw that we needed some vocational training, not just regular college training. The vocational training was at a fraction of a cost. Because we linked it to our business, we had people who had training and jobs immediately. That's where the system has to change. That's why we need real people who are suffering real issues to come into Congress and change it and shake it. Anybody who's been in office for 10, 20, this is on your watch. We have slid back, eroded on your watch. So to believe that there's going to be a magic wand of prosperity or economic growth just because you say so, we have to test that. We have to look at tangible results, proven numbers. And that's the difference I think we have to look at. So what I'm proposing is not just that $1,000, but actually positioning our community and rechanging how you acquire federal contracts, making it simplified. You shouldn't have to hire an attorney to apply for one. You shouldn't have to hire a grant writer. And we have to ensure that the money that's being put out is actually required to be spent in the district by companies that live in the district. So it's a bigger scale adjustment that is going to take a mindset shift of not just electeds who are in Congress, but also the people living here and feeling it.
So, Sheila, you have gone with UBI, which is another great policy, as well as entrepreneurship, the jobs you have created in the district. Commissioner, please share your thoughts. Obviously,
I mean, he opens up talking a little bit also about small business and the importance of small
100%.
business. And I know that that's something that Commissioner Holness has been very involved in, and the Chamber of Commerce. So yeah, talk a little bit about like what economic, I mean, we need economic improvement significantly everywhere, but in your district in particular. Wait, unmute.
So let me say this, that a jobs program is good. Having basic income for especially the lowest income people is a good idea also. The Green New Deals, when implemented, will bring about tremendous amount of change in the dynamics and seek to ensure that there's economic justice for communities such as District 20 that has been left behind in high poverty. I would propose some other thoughts also. One of the things that we must do is ensure that we're training our workforce for the jobs that are here. And there's a lot of technical jobs that's available. We should put programs in place to where we can do more high-tech manufacturing. For example, in medical devices, we are a country that leads that. We ought to look to see how we do that, because the truth is this: we're not going to be able to compete with the rest of the world in some of these mundane jobs that making clothes and other items. Folks complain that those jobs are gone. I think they're gone for good. So we've got to look to be more innovative and creative and look to the future. In case of the new Green New Deal, we must look to see how we position ourselves to be the leader in environmental technology, so that the rest of the world can follow us. But again, it's going to take training. So we must now prepare the folks within communities like these by ensuring that we have dollars in place and put apprenticeship programs in place that help to lift them up. That's something that I've worked to really push forward in Broward County as we build. We get involved with the trades, but we also have to ensure that those in this district has the money to go to college, because some of these will require college education. Not all of it, but some will, and we have to look at that also. If we're able to sell more of our goods and our services to the rest of the world, and I keep emphasizing that, because I think a lot of Americans don't look outside, but we're in a global economy. We have to compete globally. China is out competing us in building infrastructure in other countries, ports, airports, roadways, major hotels. We're not looking to see how we grow our small minority women-owned business to fit in that space. We're not giving them the technical support, the access to capital that's necessary. And we need to target communities like these. Now, the opportunity zones that's created was supposed to be this panacea. That ain't not going to happen. We allow for people who have wealth, who earn capital gains, to write off their capital gains taxes because they build something or put an enterprise in these opportunity zones. But nothing in it requires that anyone from those communities be given a job. Nothing says that these businesses that are within these communities be given a contract to work on these projects. So that must change. And I know they're looking to expand it. There's a Republican that wants to increase the number. But until that change, we shouldn't go any further with it. Further, within these communities, just the same way we can allow for wealthy people to avoid capital gains, I'd say those who live in these communities that find a few dollars should not pay any capital gains either, at all. So we balance the playing field and look to see how we can target money use the opportunity zone, because guess what? No one can say, well, you only targeting the Black community or brown community. It's targeting wherever the poverty and the unemployment is highest. You can now put additional funding in place to ensure that we're giving the businesses that are there technical support, access to capital, put training dollars in these communities, educational dollars, healthcare dollars, because not only is there poverty, there's also poor outcomes for healthcare issues and many other issues that District 20 and other communities similar face. So it's got to be comprehensive. And further, Social Security amount needs to be increased, because a lot of folks in our district lives on Social Security. I can tell you that I get the calls for services for these folks who have a difficult time being able to cover their expenses. And we have to find ways and means to supplement that. That should be increased so that it's a livable amount for them to have at minimum.
Security for all.
So that's yes. So Social Security for all, but you definitely
Basically,
hit
UBI.
on, Commissioner, you definitely hit on a couple of ones that were very important. Obviously, apprenticeship seems to be the one that you're really focused on. That's a great one as well. Little America First in there, which I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's totally fine. So obviously, you guys hit on some really important points, and you all distinguished yourselves very clearly, and I think that is very important.
Or they're just getting used to doing panels.
Well, that's also possible as well. Of course,
So I'm going to ask to be allowed off at about 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Oh, that's
okay.
fine. That's
So-
fine. We're all good. You will be. We can dismiss you. You
Fair
can be
enough.
excused.
Fair enough. And we
About 8
appreciate you
o'clock,
coming on,
yes.
Commissioner.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm
At
gonna.
8, I'll go off.
So I'm gonna try to. We're gonna do a quick lightning round question before we get to. We obviously want to touch upon criminal justice reform, but this one I think is. I'm looking forward to the answers here. So as you guys know, you will be either one of you will be freshman Congress people. So you will obviously be part of the new team, if you will, that comes in. But as you know, there are certain committee opportunities that one is provided as a freshman. You're typically given 2 committee assignments and potentially 4 subcommittees. So if you could choose, you have a choice. Obviously, you don't get to choose these things. But if you did get to choose one committee assignment, what would it be and why? We'll start with Sheila.
It would be the healthcare. And the reason why I would want to be assigned to the committee dealing with healthcare is because that has been my specialty, and healthcare is intimately tied, especially right now, with our economic growth, because we do see the opportunities for servicing, especially in COVID. And so it's something that we can actually get into and service immediately and start ensuring that we have not just vaccination mandates, but we do have the education so we can get rid of all the misinformation that's going out there and ensure that that funding is actually getting to the people in the community. One of the things that I saw during COVID when we were vaccinating is that there was a lot of funding that was supposed to go into the community for education. That funding went to outside businesses, and it never got in. Instead of giving that funding to trusted sources within the community, such as churches, healthcare professionals, that money did not come in. So now we have a huge misinformation a gap. We have a lot of people who don't want the vaccine, and it's because they've been actually able to just live in this world with false information. So right now, I think that I can hit the ground running, especially in healthcare, because that has been my niche. Right. And we can hit the ground running and help end this pandemic.
Okay.
Excellent. We will go with Amari. What would be your your best committee pick?
Yeah, I mean, rules first and foreign affairs second. Everything goes through rules. If you're on rules, you have an opportunity to affect every single piece of legislation that comes through the House. And look, let's be honest. If you intend on serving, for a serious period of time, getting acclimated to how the chamber operates early on in your career is something that can be advantageous to you, because you learn how things operate, how legislation really moves, right? So rules gives you an opportunity to affect, influence every single piece of legislation that comes through the House. I say foreign affairs also, those would be my 2 committee requests, because there is some back and forth in terms of how our foreign policy affects our domestic policy. We spent since 9/11 $6.4 trillion. That's not adjusted for inflation. Okay, $6.4 trillion on the global war on terror in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and also in Southeast Asia and Africa. Those are dollars that could have been spent here. When people say that we can't afford, for example, Medicare for all, which is, about $3 billion a year. They say $30 billion. Look, the number is $30 billion over 10 years. That's $3 billion a year, which is, $3 trillion a year, which is about $800 billion less than what we spend right now, right? So, we talk about the kind of foreign policy that we have, the fact that we're spending so much money abroad, the fact also that we have a foreign policy that's not geared towards human rights, towards the needs that human beings have in other countries. That's something that I care about, and I think it has an opportunity not just to affect our neighbors and other countries that we deal with, but to affect folks right here in the United States. When you look at what's happening on the border, with Haitians who are trying to come into the country seeking what everybody who is immigrated to this country, has gotten. Our foreign policy has the ability to influence, some of that. So for me, it's rules and foreign policy.
Sounds good, Amari. Commissioner Holness, what would be, if you could pick that one committee, what would it be as a freshman congressperson?
Small business, and secondly would be foreign relations. Small business, because I think we ought to transform what we do to help our small businesses. It shouldn't be about shuffling paper and just telling them what's available in terms of loan. It's about giving technical support and ensuring that they have access to capital. But technical support is critical. In Broward County, that's something that I did, working with the administration to transform our Office of Economic and Small Business Development. That office is totally different today. That's how we were able to get from 10.25% in procurement for our small minority and women-owned business through our CB and RSB program to 44%. That's a big part of what we must do. And it ties in with also international relations, because we got to sell more of our goods and our services to the rest of the world. I don't know if anyone remember Ron Brown, who served as Secretary of Commerce for the Clinton administration. He was the most traveled Secretary of Commerce that we ever had. And the reason he did that is so that he could be all over the world. When the war was happening in Kosovo, 3 warring factions, because of him, American technology built the telephone system that they all end up sharing because we put our people out there. So here's the other piece of this that we need to look at. We need to lead more with commerce than with military. That is something that China is playing very hard to, okay? So here's what happened. When you go in and you build that relationship through commerce, folks are gonna want to be on your side. The Wall Street Journal did an article a few years ago, about 3 now, that says that Africa is the future. Speaking of its young population, its raw material and natural resources, and America is not ready. And it talked about how we're leading with our military rather than with commerce. We need to right size our military and redirect those fundings to ensure that we're expanding the sale of our goods and our services to the rest of the world. And I've traveled a bit on trade missions through the program that I do, to India, to Nigeria, to Ghana, to Israel, to Colombia, to Costa Rica, and elsewhere. And what I will tell you is this: if you go there, who's building the airports? China. And many of these countries don't necessarily want them. The seaport, the roadways, they don't want them, but they have to do these infrastructure projects. They would rather not, because China requires them to buy their material, use their architects, engineer, provide a labor force, and then when they're finished with that, they end up saying, hey, we got to get permanent visas so we can come and set up wholesale shops to sell to your customer. So they're locking in these marketplaces that should be natural to us as a country with the greatest diversity that can send a loyal, patriotic citizen to any part of the world to open doors for us. We ought to utilize that more than we have in the past.
Fair enough. And
wait, yes, you're muted though, Representative Hardy. Unmute.
Go for it.
Unmute.
Yeah, I think it's very important that we not lead with our military, and I think it's very important that we lead with diplomacy, and that we emphasize our ties to each other, which can be economic ties, cultural, or other value ties. I would say though that China, has really modernized Western imperialism and put very much of an economic spin on it. And what China is doing is basically imperialism via commerce. And I think it's very important that we find a way to engage folks around the world in ways that are not exploitative, and in ways that acknowledge that there are longer term things to be gained from relationships where everybody wins and where no one is doing what economists call rent seeking. right?
Yeah.
Where you're seeking gains that aren't necessarily based in what other people are getting there. So
Yeah. Well, I've actually been watching it for a while and say what they're doing is infinitely smarter than what we're doing. And I'm not pro imperialism economically or
Right.
military either. I'm not pro either, but the way they're doing it is just smarter, and they're not killing off a lot of their children fighting in all these wars. So it just seems to be a better move.
Yeah, definitely need a military regression.
Well, speaking of
aggression.
defunding, we
Yes.
could get into that.
But since Commissioner Holness does have to leave in a minute, I want to do one more sort of. You can. This is
He's
not
treating
something
this
that's,
like it's a bridal shower.
Well,
He's
let's
got
have
games.
a little fun. Let's have a little fun.
Criminal justice.
I want to give you guys and Commissioner, since you do have to go in a couple of minutes,
We'll let you go first.
I'm going to let you go first. Ask your opponent a question.
Yeah.
Whatever you would like
You
to
can
ask.
ask an opponent a question.
You can ask. It could be for both, or it could be for one or the other.
Yeah.
Whatever you would like to ask. Since hopefully, knock on wood, I don't mean to be biased here, but hopefully our next congressional representative is one of the three people sitting here right now. So I certainly would like to hear.
What would you ask them?
What would you ask them?
If I were sitting in your seat, or if I just
ask Sheila and Omari a question.
Or one or the other.
Or
Go right
either
ahead.
or. Either or, yeah.
Well, if I wanted to just have fun, I want to know what their favorite food is.
Okay, that's fair.
That's fair.
That's
You
fair.
can do that.
All
You
right.
can- I never said there was no rules. You can ask whatever you want.
That's fair. All right, Sheila, what's your favorite food?
It's lambi and noix, which is I think they call it conch in English, and with cashews. Yeah, conch with cashews.
Sandy. Yeah.
All right. No, Mari, you have to say your favorite food.
I'm very partial to a smothered pork chop and grits. Together, they got to be together. Smothered pork chop, grits, and eggs. Absolutely, like death row meal, right? Like if I'm falsely accused of a capital crime
That's
today,
the meal.
So that's the.
and they
that-
say,
that's the- okay.
you got one last meal before we take you out of here.
Okay, so
That's what I eat.
before Commissioner Holness leaves, I'm going to give either of you an opportunity to ask him a question. Do you have Sheila? Do you have a question for Commissioner Holness?
I do. I mean, since we're asking these kind of questions,
You can ask whatever you want. We're putting that out there. Yeah.
So I've been wondering this for a very long time, and I really hate to ask you this, Commissioner Holness, in front of everybody. But what is your favorite song, and can you sing it?
Okay, now that's like throwing down a gauntlet kind of thing. That's kind of you're getting all kinds of rowdy now.
One love, one heart. Let's get together.
Nice.
Feel all right. Yeah.
A Bob Marley fan. Excellent.
Got a great picture of Jen in a restaurant with
the
a
big
great
Bob Marley. Yeah,
picture.
in Hollywood, in Hollywood, Florida, in Patty Mac's, there's a
Patty
really
Mac's,
cool
yes.
Bob Marley mural.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Amari, a question
Yes.
for either Commissioner Holness or Sheila.
Well, I'm going to put Commissioner Holness in a tough spot. I know
Do
that
it.
there are a lot of great places to get this food, especially in Broward County, especially in central Broward County, but I'm just going to limit it to 3 places. So if I'm getting Jamaican beef patty and cocoa bread, I know what I grew up eating in Broward, but I want to know, are you going to Charlie's Pastries? Are you going to Golden Crust? Are you going to Dutch Pot? Where are you going?
He needs a recommendation.
Right.
Well, let me say this, right? Now you're trying to get me to
Oh yeah, he's pinning you down.
Some of my friends. Well, first of all, Dutch Pot, patty and cocoa bread. No, that's not their specialty. Oxtail is their specialty. So we can take that off the table. They won't be upset with me if I said that. So I got to tell you this. You know, Charlie's been around a long, long time. I love my folks over at Golden Cross, but Charlie's got, and there's something else that Charlie has that Golden Cross doesn't have, and it is not just a patty. It is. A little bit different. It's like a probably call it a meatloaf. So inside of the bread it's nice moist bread like cocoa bread, but
Right.
inside of it there's
Right.
meat
Right.
set inside. So that would be when I do eat any meat. Okay, that's probably what I would eat.
Well,
The Charlie's would take the cake.
you're a man
There
of
it
good
is.
taste, because that is also my preference. Nobody comes close, in my opinion, to the quality I consistently get from Charlie's pastries.
I would definitely say that I've seen the lines at Dutch Pot, and
This is just making me hungry.
Yeah,
but
He's right. That's not their thing. That's
and I
not their
didn't even
thing.
eat meat, but that sounds good. I could get into that.
Commissioner, if you have to run, we
That's
understand.
all
Obviously,
good.
we would love to keep you, but we
We'll
certainly
get
understand,
into some
you
more
have some
stuff.
priorities and all that.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Thank you for
Appreciate
coming
you
on,
guys.
though. Appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, Commissioner. So for our two non-corporate candidates.
Yes,
that
we are now
here,
down to the two non-corporate candidates.
And,
So now we don't even have to.
and now that it's just the two of you guys, we'll say this to the audience. We are certainly pulling for either one of these two to be our next congressional representative.
Well,
No
we support
disrespect.
non-corporate candidates.
Correct.
It's that. It's
You know, again, look, we've heard the answers that other candidates have given in regards to, their opinion about corporate special interest money and whether or not that defines them as candidates. We've heard the answers. We all know it's a load of malarkey, as our president likes to say. But obviously, the two candidates who are running here do not take corporate special interest money, so we really don't have to dive too deep into that. But obviously, criminal justice reform is a very big issue. We all know about the issues that have happened with policing here in South Florida. It's much deeper than that. We certainly would like to hear your thoughts on what you think some reasonable solutions would be. Obviously, there's no silver bullet here. One of the issues that we obviously are very strong advocates for is eliminating qualified immunity.
That's a first step. Like that's
I
a
think
basic
that
thing
that's
to me.
a-
That handles it on a civil level,
Yeah.
but that's not. That's a thing that has to be done.
But I
that's
do think that a policy like that could definitely change things. But certainly from your perspective, whoever would like to jump in first, please share your thoughts on, what you would see as, potentially a policy or policies that would help dealing with racial justice reform, criminal justice reform, and certainly policing reform.
So I believe, well,
No, go ahead, Sheila. We could do ladies
right.
first.
Okay, thank you. So one of the biggest issues that I see is that we have to really, really start buckling down on our policing systems. When we went to look at what was going on with the whips and the horses, we come to find out that there are 15 states where you still now can whip people. Right. And that was a mechanism they used in policing. And once you start understanding the background of policing in certain areas, it has come from different rules and policies they had during slavery, during all these systematic injustices that were towards Black people. So if we understand that, the inherent nature of it, it should be no surprise that there are some police departments, there are some policies that are targeting Black people. And that's what we have to take back. We have to start rethinking and taking away all the systematic racism that's embedded in police departments. I'm not saying everyone, but there's a good number of them. And so I think we should treat it the same way that we do with how we treat healthcare. And healthcare, when they have any kind of fraud and abuse, the first thing we do is have systematic surveys. These are consistent and they know when they're coming, and we see what are the best policies. And if you are doing any kind of fraud and abuse, then you are punished. We have to take that same system to policing, because we know, and we've never ever taken a good look at every single one. But we know it exists. We know every day when we see police officers mishandling our children, mishandling our members in society, and they do it with such callousness. Like this is the norm. And then they're protected. This is a serious issue. And that's why I'm asking for us to do an actual investigation of all the police systems. And so we can start having those investigations, not by the internal police departments, because you can't be audited by yourself. You have to have another area that's auditing you. That's simple. And that's what I'm proposing we do. And I think the real restraint why people don't want to go in this direction, because they know what the results is. There'll be a lot of different policing departments, a lot of different policing systems that will be caught and have to change their ways. And that's how we cured a lot of the problems in Congress when it came to healthcare. So I'm suggesting we do the same thing. And in addition to that, the mental health needs of the community are so imperative. When we start having police officers stepping into that gap who don't have the capacity to handle mental health issues, we find ourselves where we're being targeted and abused. Most of our children don't have access to healthcare, much less mental health. Most of them are dealing with systematic problems with the law, with homelessness, because they're really wrestling with healthcare issues. So it has to come hand in hand as far as policing and what we even the sentencing time for our kids who have these issues.
Thank you, Sheila. Amari, please
Yeah.
share your thoughts.
Yeah, look, I think the first thing we have to do is we have to limit the range of conduct that's reached by the criminal law. And let me just we have to decriminalize stuff. Okay.
Right?
So, we have lots of laws that criminalize certain conduct. And every time we criminalize something, we're giving the police an excuse to interact with a member of the public that they wouldn't otherwise have, right? A reason to interact with the public and to get them ensnared in this unfair criminal justice system and to potentially subject them to brutal treatment by the police. That's what we do when we criminalize a certain behavior, right? And so there are lots of behaviors that we can decriminalize without any loss to public safety. Drug use and drug possession, and in my opinion, the commerce with respect to certain drugs, we should decriminalize these things because that is often what gives the police an excuse to have an interaction with a member of the public, to arrest them, to get them involved in this criminal justice system. So if we're talking about police reform, we should start with the reasons that police have to interact with the public, and that's the criminal law, and reducing the scope of the criminal law, reducing the scope of the activities that are reached by the criminal law. That's number one, decriminalize stuff. Number two, I think that we need to drastically reduce the scope of policing in society more directly, right? And so how do you do that? There's this phrase, I call it unbundling the police. If you look at how police officers spend their time, less than 10% of it is spent, and in a lot of cases, less than 7% of it is spent apprehending violent criminals, right? The rest of it is spent, when you look at the calls for service, it's property crimes. Some of that is what it is, but a great deal of it is responding to people with mental health issues, responding to domestic issues, and traffic enforcement. And I forget the statistic off the top of my head, but the vast majority of interactions that people have with the police start with a traffic stop. Well, if you go to other countries, they have unarmed traffic enforcement.
Yes.
Why? Because in my opinion, police officers are overqualified to be writing people tickets for rolling at a stop. You don't need someone armed with a gun and handcuffs to do that. And so the first step to unbundling the police, or to disaggregating the many different public safety functions that we currently say this belongs to the police, is to get traffic enforcement to the point where it's performed by employees that are uniformed. And yes, like their role is public safety, but they're not police officers who have the ability to investigate non-traffic matters. They're not people who should have the ability to take you into custody. It's folks who just are literally writing you a ticket because you ran at a stop sign or ran a red light. And by the way, the research shows that traffic stops are by and large very safe for the police, and that the instances in which they are unsafe, it's because they have stopped someone on a traffic issue, but that person has some other issue going on, perhaps a warrant, perhaps they have something illegal in their car, like a controlled substance, which goes back to why we should decriminalize stuff, or a weapon, or what have you. And because that person knows that the police has the ability to take them into custody for these other things. So when they get stopped for speeding, and the police officer is walking to their vehicle, they're making a decision, a fight or flight decision in their head, right? Should I respond with violence towards this police officer because I'm not going to jail today? Or should I just accept the consequences of being stopped, right? So getting traffic enforcement away from the police, and also having trained crisis responders and interveners who are trained in mental health and other aspects of people's well-being, so that we don't have the police being the first responders when the issue is really related to someone's well-being. So the first step is decriminalizing. The next step is drastically reducing the scope of policing in society. And then the third step, which people talk about, I think, too much, is oversight and accountability. right? These are the back end things. These are the reactive things. These are the things that we focus on when the police, have already brutalized someone, right? But I do believe that police officers should be accountable to a civilian oversight authority, and that this oversight authority should have the ability to standardize policies and practices across several jurisdictions in a given region or state. And in addition to that, I believe that these oversight authorities should have the ability to hire and fire police executives, to hire and fire and otherwise discipline frontline officers. So all three of those things I think are essential.
Yeah.
That is very descriptive.
We're also big into demilitarizing our police.
Yes, of course. I just want to say that I filed 2 bills. Each of them were over 50 pages to address unbundling the police. And so it's a very detailed bill, House Bill 1531, filed in the 2021 legislative session. And the appeal.org said it was potentially the most far-reaching piece of legislation on police reform that had been introduced by a state legislator in the country. And then House Bill 1609, which was the oversight piece, which goes into tremendous detail about how we can better accomplish that.
I mean, I've always said, like, if all somebody has is a hammer, all they're going to see is nails. And I think
Yes.
Right?
What do police officers show up to a scene with? Handcuffs,
Right.
a gun.
But even now with the
mace.
right here, like when you're presenting a job opportunity as gearing up to go into battle every day,
Right.
you're going to inherently attract a certain type of person to that occupation. If
Yes.
policing was instead of more patrolling, but I always say we need them on the back end. We need them investigating crimes, solving rape, solving murders.
Right. Which they're not very good at solving.
No, their close rates are pathetic. Like,
Yes.
if that was where law enforcement was focused, was on those issues, you would be attracting a very different kind of person into that field. That's what I think. Like, so if you're not giving them all those weapons, it's not going to be, they're not going to all come in there all G.I. Joe.
It's the historic nature of it, I believe. Like the historic nature is to show force. When they come in with riot gear, it's to create fear, intimidation, and to get you to submit. And that's where we're looking at the historic reasons of why you're coming in riot gear. Why are you holding on to your gun when you step in? It's all coming back to the same psychological of, it's a slight form of terrorism even. Come in, scare you to death, and make you behave and keep on using force instead of us having a real methodology or best practices to use on a scene. They're still using that. And that's really where the detriment is. What are you doing every day? What are your practices?
And I would just add, Jen, you're an attorney. Better Fourth Amendment jurisprudence would help as well.
Oh, for sure. After 9/11, what happened? I feel like 4, 5, and 6 went out the window, and then everybody always freaks out about 2. I'm like, well, you guys can all worry about 2, but 4, 5, and 6 are gone. So I don't know how good 2 is going to do for you.
Like if you look at the history of Fourth Amendment cases, there weren't a whole lot of them until the advent of the car. And until many Americans started driving cars. No, I mean, this is. No,
it's true. And does the passenger have control of the car? And if it's in the passenger's possession and not the driver's possession? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, basically officers are in a situation where, with respect to cars and, look, they get to decide whether they have probable cause to search a car. And, whereas before you needed a warrant and, the first case, and I forget the name of the case, but, there was a case in the early 1920s where the Supreme Court decided, obviously because a car can get away, we shouldn't require that police officers get a warrant to search a car. And so now you've made the police officer, the judge, and the law enforcement officer at every single traffic stop. And that creates dangerous situations for the police and for the public. But it also gives the police more opportunities to ensnare members of the public in this extremely unfair and inequitable criminal justice system.
Yeah, I would also point out that in the list of dangerous professions, I would like people to know that law enforcement and police officer isn't even in like the top 20. Right. So it's interesting how they're always claiming fear for their lives and how dangerous their job is. And I'm not saying that they don't encounter dangerous situations, but roofers, telephone pole workers, loggers, miners, fishermen are all more dangerous jobs than police officer. Firefighter is a more dangerous job than police officer. So like, when they're claiming that, it's kind of like, yeah, but not really. Not according to the numbers, they're not.
It's a I'm sorry, go ahead, Peter.
No, Sheila, please.
It's a psychology behind it. because what happens with police officers who are always consistently exposed to trauma, they don't really have a recovery portion of it, right? It's just get out there and work, get out there and work, be intimidating, you know, strong power, aggression. And so when you have someone who's consistently subjected to that, that's how they perceive it. It may not be a realistic threat, but that's what they're seeing. So even some of the police officers who are working in these police departments, they feel too like they don't have enough resources when it comes to medical help. They feel too like there's a brotherhood there, that even if they report what's going on, that they are not going to be protected. And those are the things that we have to start pulling out and ingratiating honesty in policing. The only reason I know that is because my husband has 6 brothers, and they're all police officers. He's the only attorney. And so even for Black police officers, they'll tell you how hard it is. And if you do try and report, there is retaliation. There's a lot of retaliation. They'll try and take away any of your benefits, or you're going to be sidelined. So that's why I think the institution of policing really has to change primarily before we start looking at the auxiliary. And I say auxiliary because we can change that there. But when you go back in and it's us against them, and you better not report my misdoing, the culture continues.
Yeah. I think also important to point out the amount of people that get involved in law enforcement that are veterans with PTSD.
Yes.
Correct.
And that's why the whole concept of
mental health
screening is a very, very big part of the equation. Sheila, Hillary Keys is she's a friend, really awesome progressive in the Palm Beach County area, left of center in Lake Worth. She does have a question. I want to throw it up there for you. If you could please ask Sheila to follow up on her statement about education from trusted sources, including churches. So I believe that's from earlier in the podcast, if you could.
Yeah, so what I was talking about, when COVID first came, there was a lot of money that was putting out for COVID education. Part of our responsibility was to find community health workers, which what we did, we gave a service, a class, and they went out and they were actually canvassing, knocking on doors, and giving that education. A lot of that funding, though, went to companies outside of the district, outside of minority areas, and they did not use that money to come in and educate people in the minority mission. So that's where we have to be serious about ensuring that the right people get the funding for education. Many churches do have nonprofits, and they could have came in and done that educational work. We partnered with several churches. When we were in Jacksonville, we had to partner with 10 churches so they can help us get on the ground so they could be a trusted voice. This is something that we see going on all the time in the community. The funding does not come to the people in need who live in the district, and it doesn't come to the nonprofits. So that's the education where it comes to COVID relief, when it comes to education, even with healthcare, education about our system. Those educational programs really have to come from the trusted voices within the district and not outsiders. And I'll give you another example also about that. One of the people who were on the project, it was a company that was from Wisconsin. And that Wisconsin company had traveling healthcare professionals. And if you know anything about traveling healthcare professionals, they get paid twice as much as us who are sitting here working. How does that happen? How do we have funding for education from a Wisconsin person on a minority project within the district, and now they have traveling people coming in doing education? This is the problem. That's where we find our district losing out on opportunities where we could be growing ourselves. And we have to take it seriously and block that kind of action.
I think what you're talking about is just the idea of keeping it local is so important. And especially even not just even within your district, but within your communities within that district. It's like people really need to hear it from within their own community. They just do. And I think that's a very important, I think that's critical. And I understand that.
So we have 2 very important topics that we are going to wind down the conversation with. Obviously, it's the elephant in the room, and it must be talked about. The crisis in Haiti and what has resulted and what has been a result of it is obviously the thousands upon thousands of people who are at the southern border. One of the things that we mentioned on social media the other day, which I think is very important here, relevance to what's going on.
Please tell me, what did we say?
And the fact that we so readily and easily gave another $1 billion to Israel for their Iron Dome, how easily we could earmark $1 billion to Haiti to mitigate so many of the issues, economic infrastructure, healthcare, you name it.
I feel like you don't even want to get me started, because the reality is if people under that bridge were Cuban, we'd be having an entirely different conversation. This is what has infuriated me since childhood. Sorry, had to get that out. Anyway, I digress. Sorry.
It would seem to me that the only way it's like everyone just wants to say, hey, don't come to the southern border. You know, that's not the, no.
Why can't we
Why
just
don't
help
you
them?
ask yourself why they are there and they would take such risks to get there? So how do we solve it? I would think obviously financial.
What
could
can
be
we
one
do?
way.
That, I mean, like, honestly, no, because it isn't even that simple at this point.
No.
But I just honestly, there has got to be a better way to treat people. I don't understand how people come here in desperate need and we treat them like crap. I don't understand this.
So let's say you're on the,
I'm so frustrated.
Let's say you're on the congressional floor right now and you are making a plea for the citizens of Haiti. What are you saying?
Are you talking about the people in Haiti or the people that are in Del Rio?
That makes both.
Well, it's different it's different problems.
How would you be as a congressional representative? And I believe, and I could be wrong, guys, but correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the largest Haitian population in the United States is in this congressional district, Florida's 20th district. So
doesn't surprise me. It sounds about right.
So representing the Haitian community in lieu of what is going on right now, how would you be doing that if you were a congressional representative?
Yeah. Go ahead, Omari. You could start with this.
Well, I mean, so look, there are a few things to kind of unpack here. I think first of all, our immigration system is too complicated. It's too complex, and therefore it's too costly for poor and working class people who are trying to come to this country for a better life and more opportunities. It's too costly for them to use easily, and that's why we have a quote unquote problem with undocumented immigration. One of the reasons is that it's too daggone complicated to come to this country, to leave your country and come here. We have a lot of folks who are telling people, I don't have a problem with immigration. I just want them to do it the right way. Like my great grandfather and great so on. But when their great grandfather immigrated here from Italy or Germany or wherever, literally the right way was to get on a boat, come to this country, declare yourself at Ellis Island, and you're in. And it wasn't really until we had already accepted millions of really refugees from Europe who were coming here facing really bad circumstances, whether it be Ireland or elsewhere. It was after we accepted millions of white European immigrants or folks who were not considered white at the time, and we expanded the definition of whiteness to include them. It wasn't until after we'd accepted millions of them that we passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, because folks came from Asia seeking to do the exact same thing using the exact same methods, right?
And we didn't like them. We didn't like them. They were too different, and their eyes were different. We can't have that.
Right. So I just think we have to acknowledge that our immigration system is complicated because the point of it is to try to engineer who gets to come and who doesn't get to come to this country. And the point of engineering it is to exclude working class people of color. And that's really what we have to address, our broken process for immigrating to this country. That's number one. Secondly, I think we have to be honest with the Biden administration and say that you can't hide behind this pandemic. You can't hide behind Title 42 and say that you need to expel these folks before they have an opportunity to seek asylum, because number one, everyone has a human right to seek asylum. But two, let's just be frank here. Texas has a worse situation with respect to COVID-19 than many of the countries these folks are coming from. So the idea that somehow Texas is made worse because folks are able to come from countries that are handling this pandemic better than Texas had because they have leaders who are sane, that's just ridiculous, and it's an excuse for racism yet again, right? And
again, so what would happen if they were Cuban?
Right. So that's very very, very important. And then look, the final thing is to acknowledge that we owe Haiti a debt, and we haven't repaid that debt. And when I say a debt, I don't mean a literal money debt, although I do think we owe Haiti.
I think the Clintons do. I think the Clinton Foundation can write them a nice big juicy check. Right.
But in ways that can't even be quantified, we have seriously harmed that country. Shortly after becoming a country, we refused to trade with them. Not just us, but other Western countries refused to trade with them, and it really harmed them in the very beginning as they were paying reparations to their former slave owners. And then we refinanced that debt and occupied their country, which caused their democracy muscle to atrophy, right? Because now we're running things as opposed to giving Haitians the agency that they have and deserve as human beings, right? So there's just so many things that we just have to acknowledge and attempt to correct for, and it's very difficult, I think, for the American psyche to square with that.
Sheila, please jump
Yeah,
in.
I mean, this whole thing just gets me so aggravated. But yeah, talk a little bit if you can about, I mean, the disparity is disgusting. And that's what bothers me the most. Like, I think it should be like, there's one rule. Well, no, there's two rules. There's the people that just come here because they want to come here. And then there's people that are seeking asylum. And those should be the only two categories of people that there are. And unfortunately, we don't do it that way. So yeah, Sheila, your thoughts on what you would be doing right now to address what's going on?
Well, I think everybody has to understand the full magnitude of what's going on at the border and how this situation is being dealt with. These are huge human right violations. When you are whipping people, sitting them there, telling them that you're actually putting them on a plane to take them somewhere else, and you take them to Haiti, a place they haven't lived in 10 years. These people, some of them are coming from other countries in South America, and they just migrated there and they put them on planes. They have at least 8 planes going into Haiti with 130 people. We have to understand the travesty what's going on. And then you have people who are whipping them, who are yelling at them. Is this what you do in your country? These are human rights violations. And if we don't act now, we're going to be complicit. Every single one would be complicit because we see it on video. We see kids there. We see everything going on. And all we're asking for is to be treated equally. That's all we're asking for. Give us an opportunity to have a critical fear hearing. And on top of that, even if we didn't have the hearing, the United States must give a humanitarian parole to the Haitian people. If they found it just to give $32 million to a country that suffered an assassination, to a country that had such an earthquake, why is it that we can't get humanitarian parole? These are the issues that we have to grapple with. And be honest, the only rationalization is your racist policies towards Haitians, which have been historic. We've seen this before. And the real thing that's unfortunate is that it's all rooted in discrimination. There really is no real difference. We saw that 96,000 Afghans are scheduled to come here and get cars and get all kinds of things. What about Haitian people? They want to rationalize it and say, well, they had an exchange or they supported. The Haitian people were fighting during the American Revolution. The Haitian people were here fighting for independence. We've been paying our dues. During COVID-19, I hired so many Haitian people who were going to work upholding the healthcare system. So you can't tell me we didn't pay our dues. You can't tell us that we didn't even help you. We helped you form this country that we live in. So for you to say that we can't even get a decent shot at having a fair hearing is despicable. And we have to address that, because if we're putting money and we have different agreements, if you look at the agreement that we even have with Jerusalem and Israel, there's money that's spent there on an American budget, and it has to be spent in the United States to help it as a security interest. Haiti is a security interest also. Haiti has always been consistently a security interest for the United States. So why is it that we're not using that funding to help build the infrastructure of Haiti? Why is it that we're not using the same thing that they do over there? They actually use Jewish Americans go in and help build the infrastructure. That's the same kind of project we have to have in Haiti, right? Building the infrastructure by people who have the cultural competency to actually do it. But when you put $32 million in a country and then you bring other companies who don't know the country, don't care about the country, they exploit the country. We saw this already happen. So why are we doing the same thing and then shipping people back and denying them a fair due process hearing? Why are we doing that? And
we know why. We know why, don't we?
We have to confront it. And I want to make it very clear, I'm of Haitian descent. That's always been my identity because I grew up in South Florida, and that's who we are. And I've seen how we've been persecuted, how we've been treated, how we've been deported, and how we've been targeted. Anytime there's an election year coming up and there's some kind of issue of immigration, they always want to point towards Haitian people. And we've had enough. Right now in Congress, we do not have not one Haitian American member. We've only had one who was a Republican, and she was elected by a Mccormick community. It wasn't the Haitian community. So this election is so important for us because this is our first time where we will have a voice at the table in which makes decisions for us, the table that has made decisions to send people into the country that exploits us, the table that has not recognized the power of Haitian people. And the saddest thing about it is that the Haitian people stood arm in arm supporting Biden. So all that we are asking is recompense us, stand by us, give us a fair hearing, and it's time that we do it. If we do not do it now, we'll all be complicit in this healthcare, in this humanitarian violation.
I agree. And I think something that I point out, and I know people hate to hear this, but the reality is that if Trump were in office right now, you would see a lot more people speaking up on this. And the
Yeah.
fact is that you've got your very complacent centrist Dems that they're not willing to do anything to criticize Joe Biden because
Right.
in their mind, well, he saved us from the bad orange guy, which,
Right.
okay, fine. But, he's actually being worse. And when you look at the numbers of deportations,
Because
he's
he's getting-
actually being worse.
Because he's getting cover.
And I think that's
right.
the
Look,
thing. Like, we're being
it's-
more complacent.
Well, I just want to say this. First of all, it's not enough just to stop the absolute worst abuses that were perpetrated by the Trump administration, right? Which is like separating children from their families. It's not enough just to avoid the absolute worst thing. Like, we need actual improvements there. And I think also, and this is just purely speculative, I think Republicans get in Democrats' heads about how we handle the border issue, and we feel the need to be tough on the border and to not be soft on the border. And we govern kind of looking over our shoulders, thinking about what the Republicans are going to say about us. The fact of the matter is people seeking asylum should be let into the country. While their cases in immigration court are being handled and adjudicated, they should be allowed to live their lives here. And that's something that, I feel that Democratic administrations, maybe they want to do it, like, deep down on the inside, but they feel that they have to maintain this tough on this border stance. And it's completely and utterly, it's not only nonsensical and ridiculous, but it's inhumane. And I think it's important for us to remain intellectually consistent. One of the great human tragedies, right, are people who can't find a way to maintain, to basically do what they think is right. It's okay to be wrong and to lack information, right? But if you know what's right, you have an obligation to do what is right, right? And I think we know, whether it's a Democratic or Republican administration, what's happening at the border is wrong. And I think it's incumbent on those of us who criticize President Trump to be equally forceful in our criticisms of President Biden, because to do anything else is to lose whatever moral high ground you might have had. And at that point, you don't have any standing to criticize anyone for the policies that they implement at the border if you're unable to be consistent about it. And that's just,
I want to add on to what, I'm sorry. I wanted to add on to what Omari was saying, that, if you look at really what is the root cause, why do we look at Haiti as a separate entity? Like, there's no respect there. You never find, the administration has to learn that you need to have Haitians at the table when you're discussing what's going to happen in Haiti. Every other country has the decency to have that there, that correspondence, that organization that's lobbying. But Haitians are treated as if it's a colony of the United States, and we're going to make decisions for you. We are going to actually implement things that are going to make you dependent on the world. So instead of us coming in and saying, hey, we'll help build an infrastructure because you have businesses, we're going to flood your country with things like rice, which Haiti can grow its own rice. What you did was destroy its crops, right? And you destroyed its business. Or we're going to flood your country with other goods that the U.S. wants to get out. And what that does, it puts us in a position of dependency and not sustainability. That respect has to be there. And so we're advocating and pushing the administration to do something different here. Do not look at Haiti as a colony that you just throw things at and hope it lands somewhere and someone catches it. Give us that due respect. Allow us to sit at the table. Allow us to talk about measures that are based on sustainability, and give us the equal opportunities.
Thank you, Jason Call, for pointing that out. That's just the kind of geeky thing that I will have to go do, is I sit and watch those kinds of things. But I've always thought of it like, we're angry at Haiti because they rose up and they were not conquered and they were not treated the same way. And it's like, we're just punishing them. We're just going to forever punish you. And that's why. So it's always been ridiculous.
And I want to get to, because we've got a lot of MMT people in the chat. So we want to just clarify, if any of you are arriving late, I can assure you that Representative Hardy has already indicated that he absolutely supports the federal jobs guarantee, which means that he obviously supports the concept of modern monetary theory. Sheila, do you support the concept of modern monetary theory?
Yes. I'm sorry.
She's multitasking.
Yes, I'm so sorry about that. I have another appointment at 8:30, but I'm trying
No,
to
go,
like,
go. No, jump off. Honestly, go. It's all good and jump off. But they're wanting to know that you support MMT.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
So there you go, guys. You got your MMT commitment, and now we can dive into something even more fun, which I know probably a lot of you have been waiting for, because these are two.
It's okay, Sheila. You can go. We'll talk with Repo Marty,
two-
and we're going to
two-
get into it now.
So now that we are, she had to leave?
She had to go.
Oh, I didn't
It's
realize.
okay.
So,
I'm good.
Mari, let's say you are fortunate enough to win this race and you become the next congressional representative of this district. There's a lot of people who are going to say, so how quickly are you going to cave like the squad and this and that? But I think people really need to understand, and this is, again, you can go in whatever direction you want to go in. You know, when you have 535 federally elected representatives on Capitol Hill, and probably 500 of them are captured by corporate special interests, there's a very small sector of the actual electorate, or the actual elected representatives, that actually want to fight for the issues that matter. So let's say you were to get there. How would you strategize in terms of potentially voting in blocks, building those relationships, whether it is with AOC, Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib,
and you're going to take the heat. You got to take the heat.
If you can't take the heat, get your butt out
and
of the
here,
kitchen.
and more importantly, what are your thoughts on voting present?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I wish that the both of us were still on this, because I'm going to take heat for this position, and you know, I think other folks who are progressive should, you know, have to answer the same questions in the same venues, because if not, you can, you know, play both sides, right? Yeah. So look, I certainly would not have voted present this week, and look, my degree is in economics. One of the first things you learn is this thing called a budget line. Jen, if you have $100 and your budget is between two things, guns and butter, you're gonna pick the right mix of guns and butter that to suit your preferences. Now, if I give you $50 extra and tell you that these dollars can only be spent on butter, that is going to affect not just your consumption of butter, but also your consumption of guns, because it changes the mix of guns and butter that you choose based on your preferences toward these two things, right? And so I just think that it's very important that we realize, I get that the Iron Dome system is a defensive system, but the fact of the matter is, when you give someone extra money, even if you restrict it and say, as folks are saying about this, that it's only for the Iron Dome, that of course frees up other money for things that do not fit our shared values with respect to human rights. And so, yeah, no, I would not have. I would have voted no. You know,
I just want somebody to take a stand, clearly. To be honest with you.
Well,
present is not acceptable.
Look, I'm just going to be totally honest with you here. There are a lot of folks who I respect and admire who have positions, you know, on this that are different from mine. And the fact of the matter is, I have had to learn a lot about this topic in a short period of time. But you know, I have to sleep at night, right? And as I see it, there are about 5 million Palestinians in the West Bank and in Gaza combined, whose human rights are being violated daily in ways that I think it's very difficult for us to appreciate, being as far away from the problem as we are today. And in addition to, so, you know, there are the flare-ups like what happened in May that we see that look really bad, but there's like the day-to-day life of living as a Palestinian in the West Bank and not having access to clean and potable water, for example, not being hooked up to the Israeli national water grid, right? There are issues with folks in Gaza where the youth unemployment rate is unbelievable, and, you know, where the electric grid is controlled by Israel, and, you know, they don't have access to electricity all the time, where there are rolling blackouts and all sorts of other things, where there's the fact that we have a blockade there that's in violation of international law. You know, the fact that, you know, there are settlements in what should be Palestinian land. And, you know, I have issues with all of that, with the forced demolitions and the evictions and, you know, the raids and the detention of Palestinian young men. that's extremely problematic. And I have tremendous respect for people who are on the other side of this issue from me. And look, as a Black man, I can empathize with my Jewish brothers and sisters who have been victims of anti-Semitism. I stand strongly against anti-Semitism, but also for the same reasons that I stand strongly against anti-Semitism. I cannot accept or tolerate what I know about the Palestinian condition. And, that is something that I think, we really need to address in a serious way. And I just want to be clear, this latest funding issue, and again, these issues are complicated. These are issues that have been evolving for a long time, but what this issue is and what it isn't. Okay. We have already committed to $3.8 billion a year to Israel's defense, both offensive and defensive military capabilities. It's about $3.3 billion annually in foreign military financing. And that is used to buy, for example, the Hellfire missiles that took out the Al Jazeera building. But in addition to that, there's the $500 million for the Iron Dome system, the Arrow 3 system, which is a longer range missile defense system. And so what this discussion was about wasn't about the ongoing memorandum of understanding that was inked during the Obama administration or at the end of the Obama administration. This was about whether we should send an additional $1 billion to Israel for the Iron Dome, which, yes, is a defensive system, but I think we know that money is fungible. And I think also that if we really care, if we really feel that Palestinians are being mistreated by Israel's military and political leaders, we have to be willing to do something about it. And so what is that thing? What is that piece of leverage that, we use to communicate our values? If not this, then what? And if not now, then when? And so, and again, this is something I didn't come out of the womb talking about these issues. I really had to learn about these issues because they're complicated. But once you apprehend the facts, I think it's very difficult for a person of principle to come to any other conclusion. So I've got to read more, I've got to learn more, but that's where I am. And that's what I believe the progressive position is.
So Amari,
I just have to tell you this: at least you won't be called a self-loathing Jew after tonight. So that's my happy title that I get.
I don't think, and I just look. This issue has I think personally I've experienced more pressure about this issue than I believe it merits with respect to what people in this district care about and what affects their day-to-day lives. Most people, even most folks in the Jewish American community, they're focused on bread and butter issues. But from the very beginning, there were folks who, because I was a progressive, reached out to me and wanted to pin me down on some positions because they feel that progressives are wrong in their positions with respect to this human rights problem there. Look, there was a member of Congress who said to me that they will do everything they can to defeat me if they perceive that I am anti-Israel.
Yep.
And I just don't understand why the discussion is this way.
I can explain it to you.
Well,
I grew up with it. I grew up with this.
Yeah. I just think that we're all, if we're all honest with ourselves, I think we realize that there are serious issues here, in that we should be able to talk honestly about these issues without fear of being labeled as hateful.
It's almost, I mean, honestly, I do the best I can as somebody that is of the tribe to support that notion. I find it very frustrating that people do not understand the difference between Judaism and Zionism. And the reality is that Zionists want that. That's done very purposefully. It's very much used as a weapon to call people anti-Semitic to get what you want. And what it does is it completely devalues real anti-Semitism. So because there is real anti-Semitism, and it has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not you support the state of Israel committing human rights violations. Those are very different things. And it's very hard for someone who isn't Jewish to talk on that. It's sort of like me talking about reparations. It's like you can only go so far into what you really, something like that, before you're out of your territory. But I will assure you that I do everything I can to talk tribe to tribe. And the reality is what we're doing is wrong. And had my great grandparents and my grandparents knew, if they knew at the time, like if someone said to them, okay, well, we're going to create the land of Israel, but we're going to have to displace and or genocide an entire group of people, they wouldn't have been okay with it. They were never taught that. They were never told that. They were always told a land with no people for a people with no land. And that has been the selling point that Zionists have used to basically brainwash post-Holocaust generations of Jews in this country. And it's very fear-based thinking, and it's very irrational. And when you're dealing with people that are irrational, you can't reason with that. They're not coming at this from reason. And that's the biggest problem that it is. It's not reasonable. And that's what you have to know. And it just is what it is. I always call Israel the third rail because that's what it's like.
Because it crosses over on both party lines. Wasserman Schultz has used that as a weapon for a very long time. It was brought to my attention by a political insider on the Hill that Debbie was actually the person who was whipping the most votes for the Iron Dome funding. Not a surprise.
Well, look, I just want to say, and I see that Hillary Cleese has put this into the chat, and I also want to address another question that Hillary Cleese put into the chat.
Sure.
But I think it's very important to distinguish from criticisms of how Israel's military and political leaders treat Palestinians from criticisms of the existence of Israel. I think very clearly that the fact that there were at least 750,000 Palestinians who were immediately displaced in that war with 47-48 is, and I don't think that folks have really come to terms for what that has meant to those folks, many of whom are still living. And if it's not them, it's their children, it's their grandchildren who are now themselves kept out of the promised land. I don't know that we've come to terms on that, but I'm not opining on at this point on the existence of the state of Israel. I'm just saying that Israel should treat Palestinians with dignity and with respect for their rights as human beings, made equal, to anybody else. Look, I'm a Christian guy. I feel that we're all made in the image of the Creator, and so that means I have to respect everybody. I know that that's a value that I share with my Jewish brothers and sisters, and I don't see that treatment. I don't see that value reflected in how Palestinians are being treated right now, and that is my concern. I've got to continue to study this issue, and someone said, "How is this complicated?" Well, because there's a history here that
it's very complicated,
knowing, right? And so I have had to learn what the issues are, which has required reading lots of documents. And so that's really, really critical. I
highly recommend a book if you're interested. I just finished. Well, I don't read anymore. I do audiology. I get read too. But Mark Lamont Hill wrote a book called, and with someone else who I can't remember his name, called "Except for Palestine," and it's this book about how progressives and the left are all about human rights except for Palestine. Right. And that's the whole nature of this book. And it goes through all the different things.
It's just about consistency. It's just about consistency. And I can understand if someone doesn't know, because look, again, I'm still learning, right? There's stuff that I know this week that I did not know 2 weeks ago about this issue that has made me change my positions with respect to certain of these issues, right? So there's a lot that I have to learn that I think we all have to learn, and I'll check out that book. But yeah, I want to address something that Hillary put in the chat. So she said, look, so I'm 31. I got elected.
Yes,
to
and
local
it's an
office.
important question. It's a good question.
Look, so I'm 31. I got elected to local office in Lake Worth Beach at age 27. I primaried a conservative Democrat who voted with Republicans on charter schools, on women's rights to choose, on all sorts of things. I primaried him to get into the House. And, Hillary asked, what makes me think that, I'll take the time to devote to Congress. First off, let's just be totally honest here. And this has been my experience. You get involved in local government, you try to solve day-to-day problems, you realize that you only have the tools to address the symptoms. And so you seek out opportunities to address the more systemic issues. And also I had a bad state rep, right? And so I primaried, my state rep, and by the way, the same thing is true here. Look, we are outnumbered in the Florida House 78-42. And there are 2 members of our Democratic caucus who consistently vote with Republicans whenever they need a supermajority. So the opportunity to do good things for people, yes, and they're both.
You're Sisyphus.
Yeah, so the opportunity to do good things for people of color, for working class folks, for poor folks, for marginalized communities, and so on, are really few and far between. Obviously, in the United States Congress, which is a more balanced body, you have more opportunities to do good things for folks in a few months than you would have in the Florida House in 8 years. And so would I be, satisfied with that and stay put? Of course, it's the United States Congress. And the thing about Congress is that it's a body that works by seniority. And so the more time you stay there, the more opportunities you have, the more power and leverage you have to deliver for working class people. And the other thing is, look, and I think Hillary might agree, maybe not. I think Florida's politics are not great for Democratic candidates seeking statewide office. And first off, I like the idea of me running statewide. I would upset people so badly in the villages. This is the.
They're not ready for you.
Yeah. Well, not look, and here's I disdain pandering. I don't kiss babies. And so like the idea of me running for statewide office in a state like this is just I can scarcely stomach.
I
it.
say that too. I would never want to run for statewide office.
Yeah. So there's that. And yeah, so look, that's where I am. I
appreciate it because a friend of mine actually said that to me yesterday about, we just got him elected to the seat he's in, and now he's turning around and running for this. Well, so look, you've heard this before, right? I mean, yes. People have said, yeah.
Yes. Look, I would say, there's a phrase, penny wise and pound foolish. If I'm effective in a body where we're outnumbered nearly 2-1, how much more effective could I be in a more balanced body that we're currently in control of, and where right now the margins are very slim? I mean, look, I think we have about a 6-vote or a 5-vote margin right now. If we continue to build a block that actually cares about working class people, where we withhold our votes, where we act like Jim Manchin acts in the United States Senate.
Yes.
That is something that is extremely, extremely valuable, and something, it's a power that I would look forward to wielding on behalf of working class people. And I know that Jimmy Dore asked a question.
That's not really Jimmy Dore, by the way.
Okay.
That's our troll. His name is Declan, we think. We're not entirely sure, but it is not Jimmy Dore.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the general idea is that we want progressives to wield the power they have to get the most for working class people and to not accept less. That idea is partly about the attitude that the progressives in Congress have and the approach that they take to their jobs. And it's also about how accurately they gauge what's possible, how accurately they can get, how accurate their understanding of what they can get is, right? And we might have disagreements about what's possible for progressives to extract from the establishment. But I think it's a good thing that we have folks whose attitude is that we're actually seeking opportunities to get the most we can for working class people. That I think is a positive development, and that's, I think, a reason to be pound wise instead of being penny foolish about whatever I can do in a body where we're outnumbered 2 to 1.
Do you know what people want, seriously? Because it's not even complicated. They just want somebody to fight for them. You're not gonna, they don't expect you to win all the time. Right. They don't expect everything to just happen. They just want somebody to take a goddamn stand, back it up, and be transparent about it. That's what they want. And when I was talking to people, it's amazing. Nobody expects anybody to get in there and snap their fingers. And well, some people do, but they're delusional. But most people just want somebody to take a stand, you know, and not back down and not cry because Nancy Pelosi gets in your face, and just realize that it's like, this isn't a game. And as much as those wealthy, very elitist, privileged people think it's a game like Stratego, it isn't. And there's people that are dying, and it's frustrating the present vote. And I'm very generous with people because I know, like, you're sitting in a legislative body. I have no idea what goes on in there. I don't know what you have to give and take and negotiate. And I get that.
Look,
to me,
it can be difficult, you know, and again, I look, I'm not there, right? But, you know, there have been votes where I wasn't the most informed as I really would have liked to be. But in the Florida legislature, you have to vote. You're not allowed to not vote. As a matter
you
of
shouldn't
fact,
be allowed to not vote. Present is not an answer.
Yeah. So like if there's an issue that is really complicated, that you find it very difficult to figure out what's the right side of the thing, you have to cast a vote. I don't think that this issue with the Iron Dome is quite that, but there have been complicated insurance issues, you know, where they're like both sides. You know, we had a repeal of no fault pass, you know, the Florida House this year, and there were people who are like progressive people. There's a lady who I know who, you know, is a you know, gave $500 to Bernie, who was calling me and was like, this is absolutely, you know, the you know, the bill that you should be supporting. And then somebody else equally progressive is like, no, this bill is trash. And, you know, you look at the issues and there's so many, you know, so I'm not there, but all I know is that I think it's good that folks have an attitude that they're going to maximize what working class people get, and, you know, forget the social dynamics of being in the body, because there is a social dynamic to that, where you have these folks who you view as your colleagues and you care about their opinions and all this kind of stuff. That's some stuff you can't care about. You know, but yeah. So.
Or your future career. And I guess my point is, you're going to make people unhappy no matter what you do. No matter what vote you take, half the people or whatever percentage are not going to like you and half are. That's just the way it goes. And if you can't handle that, then this is not the right job for you. But it's, to me, the idea of not taking a stand is completely unacceptable. It's beyond weak, and it's not a good look. You got to take a stand and let the chips fall where they may.
It's calculating, and that's the thing that a lot of people don't want. And
no.
You don't want to give Eduardo
Here you go. Yeah, we'll wrap up, but answer this.
But this is a good parting question, Amari, is if you had the opportunity, if you only had one term on Capitol Hill, but it meant that a key piece of legislation would pass, let's say an NHS-style universal health care
He's
program.
like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
that's how I feel too, right? Like, honestly, like anything is better, right? I mean, that's just a no-brainer.
And of course, with the amount of connections you can make in even just one term on Capitol Hill, if you were to pass a Green New Deal or universal health care, I mean, if you wouldn't sign up for that, then I think you know where a person's priorities are. There are the priorities to serve, and then there are priorities to serve yourself.
Or serve corporate interest.
There you go. And the great thing about this conversation that we had this evening is that we did have a comprehensive conversation, and want to give Commissioner Holness his due as well.
Absolutely. Look, I was honestly, when we put out the invites, I really only figured that we would have Sheila and Amari in the first place. Like, I honestly did not suspect. And we did hear last minute from Perry's person that he ran late and wasn't going to make it.
Yeah, he was having some technical problems, then couldn't make it. Listen, benefit of the doubt. It is what it is. But the fact that, you know, you are really putting yourself out there. And I will say this, whether you win or Sheila wins, or if either of you do not win, the fact that your voice is in the political sphere now
is very
and
important.
people know that you're here for name recognition purposes, especially in the Sunshine State, where we are so desperate for forward-thinking leaders who are not only not going to succumb to the archaic way of thinking that is so prevalent on, up in Tallahassee, but also the fact that this is such a corporate captured state. And to be able to, however long it may take, and it could take a long time, but the fact that we have individuals like yourself that are going to fight on behalf of the people and not of corporate special interests, that means the needle is moving in the right direction. And we really appreciate you coming on this
And I
evening.
just want to throw out, and if this doesn't happen for whatever reason, I just want to put this out there. Think like Escamani Hardy 26 for governor. I'm putting that.
Did you not hear what I said about statewide office?
I did, but I did.
Yeah.
I did, but I'm just
let him get through.
Okay,
the
I'm
congressional.
just saying.
I just don't, first off, my skills are legislative in nature.
Yeah.
And I can't, maybe, never say never, but I can't see myself seeking executive office.
Okay. I get that. I'm sorry. It's just, we're so drought starved for like progressive leadership in this state. So I'm sorry.
And the other thing is, if you feel that it would be a good thing to have someone like me in the United States Congress and you're watching this, go to our website, omarihardy.com, and donate. We have a key fundraising deadline, which is the end of this month. We don't take corporate money. We don't take money from, big executives and so on and so forth. We literally take individual contributions from folks who are not tied to big corporations. And
it's very important. People put Omari on your rotation, on your donation rotation.
And preferably donate something before the end of September, which this month ends in like 3 days. And I very much appreciate having the opportunity for sure.
And look, you get the website plug because you're here till the very end, which I really appreciate. Thank you so much. It says a lot. No, it says a lot that you took the time to say. No, it does. And I find that very important.
And guys, just so you know, the special election in Florida's 20th Congressional District, and please spread the word on this. The election is exactly 5 weeks from tomorrow. So if you would like to get involved, November 2nd. So if you would like to get involved, it's not just from a financial standpoint, but if you like what Omari had to say this evening, please go to omarihardy.com, sign up to volunteer, whether it's phone banking, text banking, or if you happen to be in the South Florida area, in the Palm Beach, Broward, or even the Martin County area, and you would like to assist in any form of door knocking. Which
really, the district is ridiculously shaped. You could be in a numerous amount of places and still be able to go canvassing.
That's for sure.
People ask why there's so many candidates. It's because literally every poor and working class person of color in 2 counties, each county, by the way, has a population larger than 11 states, but literally every poor and working class person in 2 counties has been drawn into a single district. And that's why this race is so crowded. And I would appreciate your help and your support. Visit our website, check us out, donate, volunteer.
And whatever happens in November, we'd be happy to have you back on anytime.
100%. You and Sheila have an open invite to come back anytime you like, Omari. We're very appreciative.
We try to be fairly impartial. I mean, look, everyone knows that we support only non-corporate candidates. So that's just the way it is. Yes. But we try to be very impartial. And as to between you and Sheila, I do. And the truth is that I like you and I like Sheila. So it's like, I get it, and fortunately for me, I don't have to vote in that race. So it's not my cross to bear.
And by the way, I'll tell you, Jen, we have a common friend. I realized.
Who?
I'll tell you. All
right. You could. All right. Okay. Yeah. It's a private thing. Okay.
Yeah. Fair enough. We really appreciate it. We will see you soon, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Thanks, Omari.
Thanks.
Have a great evening. So, needless to say, I guess you could say,
people need to take note of, like, it's not always what people say. It's just how they are. I can't explain it. And the truth is that is how people vote.
There is something very endearing about Omari and Sheila.
Yes.
And I think,
because they're not corporate,
that is a very big part of the equation. And I think, when you recognize the charisma, the stick-to-itiveness, the fact that they are not corporate, and especially because they're trying to represent a district. You know, the one thing we can say about the 23rd Congressional District, there is a great deal of poverty here, but there's also a great deal of wealth as well.
Yeah, 20 is not like that.
There is very little way. The only thing you really have, if you think about it, is Palm Beach. That's
and
it.
even the portion of Palm Beach that it's not
Does
like
Palm Beach that doesn't cover, or is that
their
that's that
district is
lowest?
basically
That's
every
right. I totally forgot that.
every black area within like 5 counties is called
and
into
I'm sure
this
you
one
guys
district.
have seen some really messed up drawn districts in this country.
This one is the
Jim
crazy.
Jordan's district in Ohio, Dan Crenshaw's
The
district
fact that
in
you know
Texas.
this, you're such a dork.
But look at the way Florida's 20th
20th.
Congressional District
It's
is
crazy.
drawn.
And really it is. It's let's take all the black people from all these different areas and cram them into one district so they have no say so. That's what it is. And fortunately, the only thing I guess that they could say about it is that
All right, John, I'm giving you your due. Good comment. Well done. That's a good comment.
exactly.
So-
He sang a song. And you know what? I was pleased that Dale Holness came on. I honestly, when we sent out the invitations, I really thought, okay, well, we'll get Sheila and Omari to come on. I didn't know. And, you know, again, Barbara Sharif is the only one who didn't respond. And I do think that that's worth noting. Not even an email response, nothing.
So we have one special guest who wants to come on before we leave for the evening. He apparently has a very important message to deliver because apparently there's a documentary being made about him right
There's
now.
a documentary? Oh, Slick Willie.
There's a documentary.
Wait, your eye is not right.
I can't even see
The
straight.
Botox went wrong. The
my-
Botox went
I'm
wrong.
poking myself in the eye. I look just fine. Jen, how are you? It's good to see you again.
So
I'm sorry. I
bletchy.
just can't help myself.
No,
So,
at least when it's Joey,
look,
you're sniffing my hair.
you know, there apparently was this documentary that was made, and you know, Monica Lewinsky's making it about, you know, me doing wrong things to her. But I got to tell you, there's some lovely lady out there who had the wherewithal to just announce to the world how much she appreciates me and how the real victim is Hillary, and that of course is Joy Behar. I mean, isn't she amazing, Jen? You know, The View. That's my favorite show in the afternoon.
I can't stand those
I'm just hanging
videos.
around. I'm, you know, having a great time, and you know, lo and behold, I mean, Joy came to my defense. Give it to Joy. I'm feeling lots of joy right now.
Ugh,
So, needless
so
to say,
gross.
I'm trying to keep myself together. But of course, they just don't want to let it go. They don't understand that I like to be a little friendly. You know, it's just
So
the way it is.
lechy.
Not that I'm inappropriate in any way.
Of course
I'm
not.
a very generous, gentle person. And, you know, whoever's going to end up winning this election, I just got to say that Sheila, she's really something.
Sheila's cute. I
Yeah,
will give
no,
you. I
Sheila-
know. Well, of course you like Sheila.
Well, you know, how could I not?
I know.
You know, that Southern charm, it's going to work
Yes,
on.
I
It's
know.
going to work on such a lovely lady like her. And so, of course, if she ends up winning the race, Sheila, you know, any excuse to get away from Hillary is an excuse. to
Yeah, I
have
think
some-
her husband will kick your
I'll
ass.
take
That's
it
what I
along. She'll
think.
have a really great
I think
time.
her husband will kick your ass.
Oh,
what I
well, he'll
think.
have to catch me first.
I've met him. I don't think. Yeah, you are slick.
Oh, well, there you go. You see, you're playing along, Jen. You understand. A slick Willie.
Slick Willie.
Slick Willie. So, look, this guy, Jimmy Dore, why does he keep coming here? and saying he's a sellout?
Jimmy hates me.
I'm
So
a
listen, guys.
I'm a sellout.
If
but
you're not
she's a
subscribed,
sellout.
please subscribe. It's free. Check us out. We do all sorts of interviews,
Yeah.
long form interviews. This was actually, if this was your first time on here, this is not normally what we do. We normally have 1 or 2 people come on. We talk about news. We talk about Florida stuff. But this was our candidate discussion. If you are so inclined, support the channel, get the Lulu sticker. As you saw, she's my little mascot. And if you go to our Patreon page, you can become a patron.
Yeah, I really want this channel to take off. I think it's important because
We're-
the more people that watch the channel, the more lovely ladies that'll tune in. And if lovely ladies are tuning in, the odds of me securing a business meeting it goes up
So
really
gross.
high. So I think if as long as everybody's here and is willing to spread the word, this is going to make a heck of a difference. I'm just really excited. I think you got some really strong potential candidates who might be represented.
And we have some interesting stuff coming up. So what do we have coming up on Thursday?
Well, on Thursday, we've got that guy, Ron Placone, that comedian. He's kind of funny.
Okay, so we have Ron Placone coming on. Do we have a
We
candidate
don't
coming
have a
on
candidate
Thursday?
yet, but we'll get one. That won't be too hard. And it looks like tomorrow we've got a special show.
Tomorrow we might have, or have we gotten confirmation?
Yeah, tomorrow. Well, we've got it looks like that lovely lady India Walton is supposed to be coming on at 12 o'clock, and then possibly a congressional representative.
We might be getting
on.
our very first congressional representative
We
interview
can't say
tomorrow. I'm
because
not going to
that's
say
the
who because I don't
promise,
want people to be all disappointed, but we are like very close to getting our first congressional representative guest, which would be really cool.
Really approve the message that this show is putting out there. So as you can see right below my finger, you see what that says, patreon.com/generational change.
Check it out, guys. Be a
You help the
Patreon.
show out. You never know where it may go. This is what it's all about.
Also, by the way, did you know Nina filed her papers today?
Oh, well, then I guess we might have to bring that.
She hasn't made an
lady back.
announcement, but she filed her papers.
Well,
So,
when you hey, I'll sign those papers. Anything to get that lovely lady. Have you seen her with those red glasses?
yeah,
on? Do you
she's
see
having
how-
no part of you. I can assure you
Oh,
that.
come on.
No.
What's the matter with me? I may be white and old, but
She's
I got no problem.
also
with those.
someone who has somebody else. Anyway.
Oh, well, yeah, but we're not talking about her right now. She ain't part of the show. But don't let Hillary find out about this. I'll try to sneak my way on here. Like I said, Slick Willie, that's how I operate. And so, of course, if you really enjoy what we've been talking about this evening, like I said, follow my thumb because that's how I always talk. And remember, I didn't inhale. I held it for a while and then I let it out. So patreon.com/generational change. This is a big deal. You got to support the show.
So we will be on at some point tomorrow for a period of time because I don't have it officially on the calendar about India Walton.
Eduardo, I not only will make sure you get this wonderful
$10 patrons get, and what it is it's the baseball jersey. It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's the baseball
If you want,
jersey.
and if you
I don't
want,
have any
and
in here
listen,
right
you
now.
only have, Eduardo, you only have to ask one time, por favor. I will sign that
Nobody
shirt.
wants you to
I'll
sign the shirt.
No,
Nobody.
that is worth something. Trust me when I say it. So if you really need to increase the value, if you will, of the shirt, just ask and I'll sign it.
Okay, I'd also like to
What the
tell
hell?
people that tomorrow night I am one of the co-moderators for a Medicare for All town hall fundraiser for North Carolina Senate candidate Erica Smith.
Oh, she's wonderful too.
I like her a lot. So that's going to be coming, and that'll be tomorrow night. So I'm going to be on a few times tomorrow for
Jen's
anybody.
getting
I'm all
around.
over the place.
Jen, are you getting around?
I'm
as much as I
getting
am?
around all in my house,
As
all
much
in the
as I
comfort
am?
of my own
Oh,
house.
that's really wonderful. And we really
Ooh,
appreciate
the labor rally's on Thursday.
That's right. Well, I love labor. I love anybody who's willing to do it for me. So with that said, we
Oh, for
appreciate you
love
guys
of
coming
God.
on this evening. I hope you're all having a great time. Like I said, I was really enjoying this conversation. It was really what can you say?
All right, go.
I
Enough.
appreciate you.
I want to eat. There could be a baked potato in my future.
Well, there could be a lot of good food, but who knows?
But I'm all about the potato.
Yeah, that's a lot of carbs.
I don't care. I am such a potato person. I could just like live on potato and all kinds of potato.
Well, Matt.
I'm not even that potato, like just potato. It's
Remember,
like my
Matt
most favorite
Damon
food.
lived on potatoes when he was on Mars, so I guess potatoes.
All I'm saying is I'm a fan of the tuber.
Guys, please like, share, subscribe, do it all. We really appreciate it. And we will see you again in about
Yeah, John
15
Omari is terrific. He's great. He is. He's great.
We'll see you in 15 hours. We hope you have a wonderful evening. And definitely get involved, whether it's Sheila, whether it is Omari, whether it's both. Either one would really
Or
appreciate
if
your
you
help.
are so inclined and to support, not the non-corporate candidate. And the truth is, we didn't get into that with Dale.
Didn't really have a chance to.
And here's the thing. We don't really need to because we know.
Everybody at this point knows who the real deals are in the race. And at the end of the day, the more we continue to push the narrative about the importance of electing representatives who are not bought and paid for by corporate special
It's very
interests,
important. Truthfully,
that's
either
everything.
Omari or Sheila would both satisfy that. And I'm fairly confident that neither of them would have voted present.
On a last note, Jason Call, who is obviously a friend of the show, friend of Jen's, Great message about Kshama Sawant, one of the
Ooh.
best elected representatives we have in the nation. Just got a
Excellent.
6-month notice for renters for rent increases. That
Would love to get
is-
her to come on the
Yeah,
show.
Jason, if you can hook that up, if you can help
Love to get her to
Kshama,
come on the
really love to
show.
get her on the show as well. So
And if anybody out there has the connection to Ilhan,
we're working on that. Let's see how tomorrow goes.
Yeah.
And we may be on.
but
our
I'm
way.
like, I don't know. I'm very fangirly. I'm kind of, yeah.
Jimmy, I know you're coming to South Florida very soon. Maybe you'll mention Jen's name at your
I doubt it.
live show.
I
He'll mention Debbie's name.
He'll mention
That's for
Debbie and
sure.
he'll probably mention Tim.
Jimmy, why don't you, I'll tell you what, you know how you could get Jen to come to the show? Leave her tickets yourself. Say, Jen, I really want you to come to the live show he's doing it at Dania Point. He'll be there.
I have no interest in
No,
seeing
I know,
him.
but-
I don't find him that funny.
No, he's,
I
That's gonna
don't. I
get-
don't find him that funny. I find him belligerent and raging. And while occasionally that can be entertaining, it's not my type of humor. Like
It's
it's just
just-
not something I find that
Because
funny.
unfortunately, the shtick just kind of runs dry after a while where that's all you're doing. So
He ain't
let's
no
be
Dave
more
Chappelle.
productive. Well, Chappelle's the champion of the world.
Or Bill Burr or
or the late George
Carlin. Well, I
So
mean,
what better way? Yeah, we can build bridges, John. That's for sure. So on that note, we'll see you guys
Bye, all.
tomorrow in the afternoon.